Good afternoon. We are ready to begin the budget review meeting. I will say to the folks that are here for the meeting, we are on a very tight schedule as usual, and so I'm going to try to keep us on schedule and keep us moving ahead so that we're not here until like Wednesday night instead of Tuesday night. But given that, I will turn it over to our Finance Director, Ms. Alexander, to get us started. Ms. Alexander.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, and good afternoon. So what you have provided today, what we've provided today is a revised copy or the latest version of our add delete list. The last budget review session that will be held will be May the 21st, and that is when these items that are listed on the placed or listed on the add delete list will be voted on. A couple things I want to mention regarding the add delete list. On the very first page, in reference to the general fund, you can see all of the additions and or any corresponding deletions. Thus far, the impact to the general fund is a reduction of 0.75 days. So whereas we started out with estimate projection of 69.12 days for FY20, we are currently at 68.37 days.
That is if all of the ads
If all the items on the list were approved, yes, ma'am. I do want to make reference to a couple staff adjustments on the third page. One of those being the hockey. Council approved resolution number 105-19. So now we're incorporating the budget. It's still balanced in the Civic Center Fund, but we're incorporating the hockey budget for FY20 since that was approved by council, as well as the funding for the Mercer project that was approved by council back in December, and that was according to resolution 440-18 that was missed throughout the initial planning process, and that has been placed on the list as a staff addition. So with that, our first presentation today is the sheriff. So our Muskogee County Sheriff's Office, I believe the Sheriff Donna Tompkins is here.
Welcome, Sheriff Thompson.
Oh, my clicker, here we go. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to come before you. This is my second time of actually coming before you with some requests at budget time, other than the general paperwork that we submit. We did have a few items that I would like for council to consider, and got a little PowerPoint. Oops, looks like we missed one here. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, something's wrong with the PowerPoint. Well, let me just go over the first one here that's not up there. It says the Sheriff's Office during our budget season identified 30 vehicles. In our 2020 capital outlay turn-in form, each vehicle met the criteria either by age or by mileage, and due to that, we requested 25 vehicles. In the mayor's recommended budget, we were approved for 10 vehicles to be purchased through a GMA lease. We are here today to request 15 additional vehicles. My goodness, I'm going to try to. It's your printout. My printout's off. I got you. Oh boy. All right. Well, I'm not sure what happened to the printout that I sent, but I'm going to stay with this. We have 5 vehicles that we have had over the year that were involved in accidents and have not been replaced or were deadlined for maintenance issued. Additionally, we have replaced 5 engines and or transmissions in vehicles. You don't have this, but it should be in your slides and in the handouts that I gave you. Not sure why the PowerPoint's not corresponding, but we also have our 6th vehicle in the shop that is in need of an engine at the estimated cost of $6,500. So to date, we have spent an estimated $37,000 in maintenance on just engines and transmissions. I know that this council has had lots of presentations before them about our aging fleet. So this year, we have exhausted our maintenance budget just trying to keep running this aging fleet. Of the 10 approved vehicles, 5 will replace the vehicles that have been salvaged and not replaced. We're in need of an additional 11 marked vehicles to replace vehicles that we have that are either from the 2004 to 2008 range. It should be noted, council should know that we only have 3 marked vehicles that are 2018s. Everything before that is a 2013 and below. So we do not have a new fleet. Hopefully this next slide will correspond. So we're requesting the purchase of those 11 vehicles. We also are requesting the purchase of 4 Chevrolet Tahoes. One of those is needed to replace one of those salvage vehicles that has not been replaced, and 3 others meet the age and mileage criteria. All are 2011 and 2012 models. With these replacements, we can detail one of these vehicles for mental health transports. For 2018, the Muskogee County Sheriff's Office transported 1,325 mental health patients, both locally and across the state. And because of our aging fleet, we have had breakdowns during these transports. We've also had breakdowns in other vehicles used for transporting across the state. In some of our other vehicles, we've had to send other vehicles to pick up prisoners where our fleet has been broken down somewhere. So our big thing this year is we desperately need some vehicles. The average price tag, just by way of information, for a Dodge Charger with technology package is approximately $53,242 a vehicle. We have gone out and got a grant that will provide computers and a record management systems to these vehicles at a cost savings of $2,611 per vehicle. The grant would fund for that. And we believe that if these 11 marked vehicles are bought through that GMA lease agreement, the upfront cost should be significantly lower, but I do not have a dollar amount for that. The average price for the Chevrolet Tahoes with the technology package is estimated at about $65,720 apiece, and we need 4 of those for a total of $262,880. The next part of this presentation is, as has been outlined by our Human Resource Director, we have critical job vacancies for correctional officers and deputy sheriffs. As of the date of preparing this PowerPoint slide, we have 34 vacancies. And I want to say here that I do appreciate the raises in the mayor's upcoming recommended budget, and I also appreciate this council's willingness to address pay and to begin to address pay, retention, and compression with the milestone increases. We are appreciative of that. That gives officers who've been here for years a little more of a bump. So I know that this council is more than willing to work toward the pay issues for law enforcement. And I believe that the public is very supportive, I do, of public safety in general. Over the years, we have employed different strategies for recruitment and retention for public safety officers. And one of those strategies has been to increase the starting pay for our sworn officers. And this has now created pay compression and pay disparity throughout the ranks and from agency to agency. I recently had a lieutenant with 18 years of service to retire with a salary of $42,000. And the starting salary today for a deputy sheriff with an associate degree is $40,587. So all of our attempts, which are appreciated again, they're just creating a huge pay compression within the agencies. And it makes it therefore more difficult to retain qualified officers. In our last budget, we addressed pay up through the rank of corporal for the Muskogee County Sheriff's Office, and as of today, the starting pay for a deputy sheriff is still 2.5% below that of the starting pay for a Columbus police officer. My proposal, rather than to continue to continue to raise the starting pay, which is just furthering the compression issue, The reason that I went through the corporal in my last budget was to begin to address compression. And to combat compression, for every sergeant, lieutenant, and captain in the Muskogee County Sheriff's Office, a 2.5 pay raise for those 50 people would cost us approximately $68,000. In this past year, we have lost, not by anything but retirement, numerous people of rank throughout the Muskogee County Sheriff's Office. Law enforcement they're retiring, and that's one of the issues that we're facing. But for $68,000, I can continue, rather than to come back in here and ask you to increase starting pay again, I would prefer to address the compression issue. We have 34 job openings, and with the retirements that we have had and those in the future for this year, our budget could easily absorb that $68,000 cost. However, the major point that I think I need to make here today is that a comprehensive public safety analysis to address pay, compression, and the duties of each law enforcement agency in Muskogee County is what's needed. We have not had a pay plan or analysis in over 10 years. We have taken this step and that step to increase the pay or address compression in some way, and I think that after 10 years, it's time that we really get serious about looking at what each agency does and what is a fair pay. And we need a plan going forward.
Sheriff Tompkins?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you given any thought to if we authorize such a study?
Sure.
Who might do that?
Well, I know that Columbus State has people, and as well the University of Georgia, I believe, did our last one that was done over 10 years ago. The Carl Vinson Institute for Government, I believe, did the last one. Am I right, City Manager? Yeah. And it was what year? 2006. So it's been 13 years since we've had that comprehensive analysis.
And I'm not sure if there are corresponding people in I know that all of our law enforcement agencies have state organizations
Sure.
and national
Sheriff's
organizations.
Association, Chiefs of Police, that sort of thing. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if there are people in those groups that might be available.
I can certainly reach out
I
to
don't
the
know.
Georgia Sheriff's Association and ask them, but I think we've gone with, just like for promotions, we've gone with University of Georgia, or we've gone with locally at CSU, so that it doesn't appear that we have we're asking for a non-biased study of duties and pay. And again, I've heard the stories from other agencies about their officers and when they came in, and because of the things we've done over the years, the pay has gotten really strange. Again, I've got an 18-year veteran who's barely making not even $2,000 more than the first guy walking in the door. So I think that a comprehensive study is really, really something that this city needs to consider. But I would certainly be happy to reach out to GSA. I'm sure the chief would probably be happy to reach out to the Association of Chiefs of Police as well.
Okay. Councilor Allen.
I'm sorry, my
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
This part right here says, additionally, with the current marshal not seeking re-election, the consolidation of the marshal's office into the sheriff's office may be an issue for the 2020 ballot box. I do believe this initiative would save taxpayers money, and it would increase city revenues in added court fees. All 14 to 17 current employees could continue in their current roles as sworn officers and would have the authority to serve all court processes. Currently, my understanding is that the marshal's office is an arm of the municipal court, whereas the sheriff's office serves process for state court, juvenile court, probate court, superior court, magistrate court. And so if each deputy marshal on the street could serve process for all of those courts, and I think that would be a cost savings and a benefit to the city of Columbus. And I think that now may be the time, because the voters of Muskogee County would not be being asked to unseat an incumbent. So there's no clear candidate, and I certainly believe that this issue, I know I've been approached by citizens in this community all the time about this issue. Again, it's not something I can do, but it's something that I would like this council to consider, that the time may well be right for that. With 34 job openings in my agency and total employees of 14 to 17, I do believe that it could be a cost savings and a more efficient way of serving process. Additionally, there's been studies that our fees are different, and those fees would go into the city revenues. So to summarize our request here today, I'm asking for 15 additional vehicles, 11 marked Chargers, and 4 Tahoes. I would like to take 2.5% and give it to all of my sergeants, lieutenants, and captains. I believe that I can cover that in my current budgeted funds with job openings and other retirements that I have had or do anticipate in the future. I believe that this year, I don't have a bottom line number, but I know that we will be returning a significant amount in salary savings to the city's treasuries because of unfilled positions. I would also ask this council to consider a comprehensive public safety analysis of duties and of pay and of compression going forward for the agencies, and to consider placing the consolidation of the marshal's office into the sheriff's office on the 2020 ballot for the public to be able to consider. And I think they could make a rational choice because, again, we're not asking to unseat an incumbent. So I'll take any questions that anyone has.
Councilor Davis.
So, Sheriff, thank you for coming today, and we appreciate everything you and your office is doing for the citizens of Columbus. We say that all the time, we just can't say it enough, so I mean that. And they're doing an outstanding job, too, and they're doing it with I guess the word is gratitude. The officers, the deputy sheriffs I see have been more than accommodating to the citizens. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Reflection of leadership. But and I'll put those 15 additional vehicles. We have that lease program set up. We have the lease program that's already set up. So those vehicles, if y'all do the math, I'll put that on the ad list. I do have a question on the...
Before you leave the vehicles, I know that Sheriff Tompkins' proposal said the 4 Tahoes would be about $260,000. Do you have any price on the other 11? She was saying 53 per unless we went with the GMA, which would make it less. Do you have a
Well, and that's
figure?
what I'm proposing is on the lease plan, not a straight-up dollar cost.
Right, so we do have a leasing program, a capital leasing program with GMA. What's already included in the budget, I've already sort of reached out to GMA to make sure that we have the capacity to lease what's included in the budget. So anything in addition to what's already in the mayor's proposed budget, of course, I have to verify with GMA that we can lease that amount. But as far as the cost of the vehicles, my costs do differ slightly from the sheriff's costs, and that's only because of the revised amount as it relates to the build-out package. That is slightly less than what was initially included in the budget package. So for the 11 vehicles, the 11 pursuit vehicles, that cost would be $400. The flat-out cost would be $490,017. And if we were to initiate a lease for those 11 vehicles, the 5-year lease amount would be $109,453.
That's what I'm asking to put. Yeah.
Per year for 5 years.
That's what I'm asking to put on the list. If you want to reflect the dollar cost, that's fine, but what I am asking to add onto the list would be under a lease program to accommodate the 15.
I was just trying to get some idea of what kind of money we're talking about.
Right,
so.
right. Well, and that's the right way to think about it, but that's why I'm saying my addition or my request to put it on the ad list is based on a lease program.
Got it. So for the 4 Tahoes, The per vehicle cost is $57,025. That is the cost of the vehicle plus the build-out. So for the 5-year lease amount that you would be placing on the list is $50,950.
Well, that's what I'm, and look, if, subject to going and just to be able to find out if it's doable, I'm not, we can come back and discuss another amount if it's I'm just saying cash on cash kind of situation on a purchase. I'm not ready to play with those numbers right now. The other thing, can you go back to the slide? Right, okay. You know, and I think everybody knows we've been working with each other for a long time. They understand financial resources, and, you know, you got to look at it, it's a two-way street. You got to look at it both ways, and you got to look at it in collective as well. But what I hear you asking, within your budgeted fund, which we have been, just as a note, we have been asking departments for the past several years, because of restraints, to do these make these kind of decisions within their budget, and that's pretty much consistent, and that's what's been happening here. But if you were to do this, Sheriff, and make these changes, what's going to happen when you come back to fill those positions that you're using?
I understand. I do understand.
Are you eliminating those positions? Are you agreeing to eliminate those positions?
I'm not eliminating any positions, sir. I mean, I have 34 job vacancies. This year, I have run 30 and as high as 40. So
it would probably be one or two or one.
you know, I mean, certainly, I'm not asking to eliminate anything. I'm saying that I'm returning to the city a lot of money in salary savings this year because we were not able to fill those positions. Additionally, we have had a lot of senior people
Right.
retire, so
You
there should be.
understand my question.
Oh, I do,
You're
I
not
do.
you're not asking for a temporary measure, you're asking for a reoccurring expense.
Oh, I understand, yes, sir.
So
I
that's why I
understand. And I'm
asked you-
certainly more than willing to work with finance if we get into any kind of a situation where we got close to filling 34
Okay,
jobs.
okay. No, I just
God
wanted
willing,
to,
I wish we would fill 34 jobs, but,
I just needed to ask you that
Sure,
question, what your
I absolutely
plans are,
understand.
because that's what happens.
Sure.
You're asking for it today, but if you're going to come back
I
and fill that
understand its
position.
return.
then-
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Okay. And you may find a way to do that, I don't know, but
and I very well could.
I have to ask that question. I'm with you on consolidating resources. I mean, that's just a no-brainer. We got to do that. I think it's just, it's always been out there, but it's the right thing to do. And frankly, all these things we're talking about here, if you really look at it and narrow it down, if we don't start thinking in that direction, when you got limited financial resources and limited manpower and just immense competition everywhere, and it's just not happening, then you're going to have to figure out a way to make it all work. And we just can't keep coming back and putting what we're doing is just, we're going back to the old way and putting Band-Aids on all the departments, in this case, public safety departments, on the issues they have.
Yes.
Instead of addressing the problems. And of course, you've heard this argument before, and, you know, I'm not going to get into responsibilities and all the rest of that stuff, but, you know, the 911 responders, or the patrol officers out on the street have been it's an ongoing crisis. I'm not saying that you guys don't have your issues too, but I'm really concerned about it. I'm just going to tell you.
Sure.
And-
And I'm concerned too. As a public safety official, I'm concerned too. I understand the police department's approximately 90 officers short. I understand that we're 30 some
Well,
odd
and then a
officers
lot of
short.
that gets pushed back on you too
Sure.
as well, so.
Sure, and
but-
we are there to help them,
But
you know.
even the local competitions in the market now are starting to concern me. That just, we got to address that, or else these problems are never going to go away. They're going to get worse.
When I say a comprehensive analysis too, I think that there should be a lot of conversations about that because frankly, you know, someone asked me a question the other day, and I believe Seattle Washington was in Atlanta offering $15,000 sign-on bonuses and a $60,000 to $70,000 a year starting pay. So this is not a Columbus, Georgia issue. This is a national issue, and I think that we're going to have to look at where we are and what are some of the, I don't think money's the only fix. I think it may certainly help some, but it's not the only issue out here for us as a community.
No, you're right, and I'm glad to hear you say that, because ultimately, the bottom line is we just can't keep throwing money at it. That's not going to fix it.
It's not the only answer.
There's
I mean, I
there's
do
other
think it
challenges.
helps, of course, but again, part of what we're doing is creating more of a problem. When you're walking in making $43,000 and your sergeant or lieutenant above you is making $43,000, why would they want to stay?
Are you asking us just letting us know about the 2.5%, that that's what your plans are?
Because it is a continuing expense. I am asking that you approve that, and I will work with Human Resources, and we could even push that down if we needed to, time-wise, to say January, whatever was necessary to get everyone where they need to be.
Does the
And I'm
sheriff
more
need
than
our
welcome.
approval on that?
She does. She does, and the actual cost estimates that I have for the 2.5% increase is $73,512. That's including benefits. And we could certainly work with the sheriff, and she could maybe implement or mirror what the police department has done in the past, which is identify maybe two positions would cover the cost of this. Maybe we can identify two positions that would just remain unfilled. I mean, they're in the budget, but they would remain unfilled to cover the cost of this until through attrition or some other means she could reinstate those funding for those two positions.
So, Ms. Alexander, are you saying to pursue this, one of the counselors needs to put the 2.5% on the ad list?
That's correct.
All right. All right, we've asked that it be put on there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Anything else, Counselor?
No, ma'am, thank you.
Mr. Fay?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Just one comment on the sheriff's last bullet point about consolidation. As council probably remembers, the General Assembly would have to act and pass some local legislation in order to consolidate the two offices with or without a referendum. And of course, if they have a referendum, they would want it, I would suspect, at the earliest possible time in 2020, because that is a local race that would normally be on the ballot
Yes.
in May of that year, possibly. So anyway, council needs to put that on their legislative wish list if you really want the General Assembly to take action on consolidation at the earliest possible date.
Is there anyone who is interested in our asking the city manager to remember this and put it on the legislative agenda?
I think it's an issue we need to take up later, not here.
I was just going to, let's let him make a note of it and bring it back to us as as part of the discussion on the legislative agenda.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted everybody to be aware of that process.
Okay, anything else for the sheriff? Well, now, Sheriff Tompkins, you're ahead of schedule, so you've done us a favor.
Well, that's good.
We're scheduled to be here till after 4 o'clock, and if all of the rest of you out there that are on our agenda follow your lead, we're doing well.
I believe in, like a good preacher, say what you need to say, repeat it one time,
Let
and
'em
then
out early.
let's go.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Sheriff Tompkins, and also to the men and women in the Muskogee County Sheriff's Office. You're, particularly this last year, your work as we face some pretty significant disruption in the government center and so forth, your devotion to us has been outstanding, and it has been noted. People recognize that you've gone the extra mile, and we appreciate it. We want to thank you for doing that. Ms. Alexander?
Yes, ma'am. So the next department scheduled for presentation is the Public Defender's Office, and we have our Public Defender, Moffitt Flournoy, and our Assistant Public Defender, Steve Kraft, here presenting.
Welcome.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. For our two new counselors who have not had the privilege of speaking before, my name is Steve Kraft. I am the Chief Assistant for the Chattahoochee Judicial Circuit Division of the Georgia Public Defender's Office, and my boss, Moffitt Flournoy, is the Circuit Public Defender. We are a state agency that performs representation in the superior courts for the entire circuit. We also have contracted with the city to handle the public defender representation in the city's recorder's court. That is a very...
Would you speak just a little louder?
Yes, I apologize. I'm getting over a little bout of bronchitis and pneumonia, so if I taper
dear.
off, let me know and I'll speak up. I would invite both of you to come by our office anytime, and I can give you the more detailed explanation of what's really involved. Some of our council members have been by the office, and one hired away one of my lawyers. And so, you know, in the big picture, we're open to you anytime. Today's request is very simple and very short in the sense that I've given you a handout. The cover sheet summarizes what we're asking for. We're asking for a total of $16,000 to reclassify seven positions, 6 investigators and 1 investigator to move him to a supervisory position. These investigators' job descriptions have remained unchanged and their classification unchanged for 15 years. Over the course of the last 15 years, as the state became involved in the program and they came to work for us in the state agency, they've attained numerous additional duties. They work independent. A lot of the time, they are now involved in all the accountability courts, the adult drug court, the mental health court, the veterans court, some things in juvenile court, and also one works in the recorders and traffic court section over there, as we have taken on the additional duties in recorders court that initially weren't part of the process, but now with the additional traffic court day. And we submitted our request to the CSU School of Business for their evaluation, and their recommendation was to, and I've included their actual letters as well, to upgrade the 6 investigators from the investigator 1 to an investigator 2. We had asked for a 16 to a 17. They recommended a 16 to a 17 increase. The supervisor, who in addition to doing the investigator duties is the line supervisor for these 6 investigators and 4 administrative personnel as well, and he is being paid as an investigator as opposed to an actual supervisor. The total cost for this upgrade would be, as I said, $16,172. Now, I will offer this as those of you that we've worked with in the past know, at the end of the fiscal year, if we have any vacancies on the city's funded attorney slots, that money comes back to the city. We have lost a senior and an experienced attorney towards the end of the year last year, and we have shifted it so that those vacancies have remained on the city-funded slots. As a result of that, sometime after the end of the fiscal year, we will be giving the city a check for in excess of $100,000. So this will make the 5th or 6th year that we have obtained a rebate from the state, and this will push it over $500,000 that we have brought back to the state in our managing vacancies and keeping these positions and using the state funding as much as possible. So I believe that that's a fair trade-off. We're going to get you back over $100,000, and we'd like an additional $16,000 added to the budget.
Ms. Alexander, would you want to speak to that dollar amount?
Yes, ma'am, that dollar amount is correct. It is $16,172. The request would be to provide funding for the career ladder adjustment of 6 of those investigators, moving them from a grade 16 to a grade 17. And then for the reclassification of one investigator to an investigator supervisor, and that's going from a grade 16 to a grade 19. But the total amount is $16,172.
And I believe Counselor Woodson wants to put that on the ad list.
I got it.
Anything else for Mr. Kraft?
Thank you so
Looks
much.
like- Thank you, Mr. Kraft and Mr. Moffett. Thank you for being here.
Thank y'all.
Mr. Bishop, would you, these folks have been so accommodating in their scheduling. We have one person between now and the police chief is supposed to be here. Would you give him a call and tell him to don't speed, but get over here? And Ms. Alexander.
I didn't see you. Okay, so the next office to give a presentation is the district attorney's office, and our district attorney, Julia Slater, is here to present.
Welcome, Ms. Slater.
Thank you. Good afternoon. There, is that better? All right, clicker. So I look up at the screen to see where I am? Yes, ma'am. Okay, not here. Oh, there it is. All right. All right, thank you so much for giving me a chance to come and present today. There are a couple of concerns with the district attorney's office budget, really two, and I'd like to go over those and ask you to fund. Actually, one of them is a budget neutral request, and one of them is a funding request. So, first of all, we are not asking for any change in our operating budget from FY19 to FY20. No change in the operating budget, but our budget is roughly about $2.98 million of your budget, but 93% of that is personnel. And I know that probably a lot of the departments have heavy personnel costs. 93% seems really high. I deal in people, and that is most of what I have is a service. And so there's a lot of personnel cost. We are requesting one full-time administrative clerk position, or in the alternative to that, 2 part-time administrative clerks, and I'm requesting 1 reclassification, which is budget neutral. So on the full-time position, I'm going to talk about the position itself and what I need that position to do as if it's 1. However, we'll talk at the end about the savings that could be had if it was 2 part-time positions. There are 3 urgent needs the district attorney's office has right now that cannot be filled by our current personnel. One of them is a response to the Open Records Act requests. As you know, this is mandatory. We have mandatory compliance through the Freedom of Information Act. We have had a significant increase in the number of requests that we get for our Open Records Acts. We do not have someone who's dedicated to do that. At this point, it is something that's being done by one of the other one of the administrative assistants who's also trying to manage that, but it is becoming increasingly difficult. And we have mandatory time frames for this as well, which is becoming increasingly difficult. We are receiving right now about 30 requests a year. Some of them are files like you might think of a file, maybe an inch or so, but it is not unusual to have some of these files that are 11 boxes of paperwork. The highest request we've gotten so far is 58 boxes. And that's one file that takes 58 boxes to house the paperwork of the file. And if you can imagine for a moment trying to prepare an Open Records Act request on, let's not say the 58, that is kind of an outlier, admittedly. It is real, it exists, but it is an outlier. So let's just say 10 boxes of paperwork on a file, which is a lot of what they're requesting. A lot of these are old murder files that have many, many boxes. And so in order to fulfill an Open Records Act request on that, the administrative assistant has to take, say, one stapled document that may have 20 pages, unstaple those, has to make a photocopy of any pages that need redactions. They can make a photocopy of the ones that don't need redactions and set those. But the ones that need redactions have to make a photocopy of the pages that need redactions, take the photocopy, line through the items that need to be redacted, make two more photocopies of that one, because you can still read through the lined items, so you have to make another photocopy to actually obliterate it so no one can read it, and then place those in the file so that we've got a record of what we sent and we've got the one that we're sending. And this is a page-by-page process in order to do this. And when we've got 10 boxes of paperwork that have to be read, obviously you don't know what to redact until you've read the pages, have to be read, understand the statute, which is what we're going to get down to, the fact that it needs to be a single employee. It is a high-level task. They have to understand the statute, understand what needs to be redacted out of these, make those multiple copies in order to have a copy that truly does have the information that should be kept from the public so that they cannot read it. It is an extremely time-consuming task to make these reproductions of these files in a way that we can hand them out to the public. It is a high-level task. It really does take someone who is trained to do this, and it needs to be done by a single employee. We do not need to have this farmed out to 6 different people trying to cover this when it is so meticulous, and to release information that should not be released would be egregious on our part. We've got to make certain that we're not releasing the things that should not be released. The current staff, I don't have anybody on my staff that can continue to absorb this high-volume task into what they're doing. And I would think that to perform this task the way it needs to be and to keep up with our deadlines would take 20 hours a week. The next task that is an urgent need for us is our vault. We have a vault. The grand jury, in its inspection of the DA's office, has commented on the condition of our vault. We understand there's a need to re-inventory and update our system of storing evidence. And to that end, we have requested and have received through IT a tracking and management system that actually coordinates with the police department's system so that we can maintain our evidence. However, we need a full inventory of the vault with all of the items that are in there now. We need to put all of that into the new system. And then once that happens, we need to make sure that the vault is maintained through the new system in a way that gives meaningful access to the attorneys when they need the items that are stored, the property and the evidence that is stored in the vault. We also need to make sure that we've got a system that can help us to return evidence to the rightful owner when that is appropriate, or destroy evidence when that is appropriate, when the time has come for that, for the destruction of the evidence. And so since we do have the software system, that has been purchased, but we need the manpower to first implement and then maintain that software system for our vault. And the third need is a need for a support of the DA investigators. One of the places that we have seen the slowdown in the cases is through the investigators. We've talked about that, but specifically one of the things that makes it difficult for them to get the cases ready to turn into the attorneys is the discovery. And we've got to make sure that the discovery is prepared and ready, and that includes copying a lot of digital information, which is essentially sitting at a tower and copying body cam footage, dash cam footage, witness statements, defendant statements. All of those things have to be copied from a DVD onto another DVD so that we can provide those to the defense as part of our requirements under the law. This is a process that could be done by an administrative clerk. It lies in the investigator's realm within the office, and it's something that if the investigators had an administrative clerk that worked with the investigators, they could help them perform this part of a task as far as getting the files ready to hand over to the attorneys. They would also be scanning the paperwork into the system. We do have a way of storing them in our system so that we can then share them with the defense through a disk, but scanning paperwork as well would be something that this clerk could do. I'm requesting an administrative position to fill those 3 urgent needs that we have at this time. A full-time administrative clerk. Our administrative clerks are G11. That salary would be $30,030. And the budgetary impact, my estimate of the budgetary impact would be $41,470.36. I'm going to go to the next slide relatively quickly because it's the last slide of this set, and that is, in the alternative, if we could receive 2 part-time administrative clerks. One administrative clerk, their primary responsibility would be those Open Records Act requests that are urgent and mandatory, and then the other one would be the one that assists with the vault and assists the investigators with the discovery, copying the discovery and scanning the discovery. and work more, the investigators, especially the violent crimes unit. If we did that at a G11, the hourly rate is $13.86 an hour, and putting in 20 hours for each of those two positions would give a budgetary impact of approximately $31,034.20.
Ms. Alexander, I see you tapping your mic.
Oh, yes, so for the full-time position, it actually would be $40,670, and for the two part-time positions, that amount is correct. It would be the $31,034.
Well, I got one right, and the other one's a discount, so even easier. These are the numbers that I tried to figure out on my own, so that's what I came up with. I apologize for the error in the full-time position, $40,670. Okay.
We have Counselor Allen.
Yes.
You answered part of my question. I'm not an attorney, so I don't understand when someone puts in a Freedom of Information request, is that, you can give that to them in a disk? You don't have to fill up 58 boxes and hand it to them? You can, digital is allowed?
That is correct. That is one way that we can fulfill it, and it's really up to us as to which one's more convenient for us as far as how we fulfill it.
So the positions you're asking for would be primarily, or part of their duties would be in that area, right? Is that what you said?
That is correct. So if it was one position, that would be one of the three main duties of that person. If I had two people, that would be the full duty of one part-time person, is to fulfill those. I mean, understand all that redaction still has to be done if we're going to, if we're sending it through the copier to make a physical copy, or if we're sending it through the copier to scan it on and then put it on a disk, it's going to be the same manpower.
Counselor Davis.
Madam DA, I'm just looking at your request. It says no change in operating budget, so you're proposing doing this within your budget?
No, I'm prepared to continue under our current operating budget, but I'm asking for the addition of the expense in our personnel budget.
So did you talk to the executive administration about your needs?
I did. I proposed, at the time, I proposed the two part-time administrative clerks, which I did not receive. And would be willing, one full-time, actually for the functioning of my office, I think we would do better with two part-time administrative clerks. But if one full-time works better for you, I'd be happy to take that.
What was their response?
It was not included in the budget. That's all I know.
Mr. City Manager.
Madam Chair, she did not present what would be budget neutral, and so that was a challenge for us. And so that is what we communicated when they came to see us. If it's budget neutral, if they can do something differently and make it budget neutral, we could work with it, but they were not able to present a budget neutral proposal.
Mr. Davis, anything else? Counselor Allen.
Angelica, just wanted to clarify, the two part-time positions would be limited to 29 hours a week or less than 30. Is that right?
That is the maximum, but her request is only requesting 20 hours per person, so
Okay.
they would be limited to 20 hours due to budgetary constraints.
And that position would not qualify for benefits, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Did I understand you correctly to say that your preference is the two part-time?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Mayor.
I just want to get in the queue. I don't want to interrupt your group. I just want to follow up on the question that I think Councilor Davis asked, and then the city manager's response. I'll tell you, this has been, for the first time going through it and watching the sausage made, it's arguably the most difficult part, because these positions are warranted. She needs them. But we heard from every department head positions that are needed for them to more effectively and efficiently function within the parameters that they're given to work. But the focus was to try to make everything budget neutral, because the budget we presented you didn't use fund balance, and there's there's a reaction to that, and the reaction is that we weren't able to cover some things we otherwise would have liked to cover. And you're going to hear some more. You're going to hear from other public safety and judicial folks who have a solid need for some additional personnel. It's just as we're working towards the objective of trying to find ways to be more efficient and at the same time find better ways to do the same old things. We're not at a point where we felt like we could add these into budget. This was something that council needed to consider.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Anything from the council?
I'll add the 2
Okay,
part-time.
we'll put the 2 part-time positions.
Thank you, Councilor Allen. I will point out that for our operating portion of our budget, we've got $65,668, so I can't absorb $31,000 into that, out of that. There was no way for me to really make this budget neutral in my, using it from my operating budget. Should I move on to my next point,
Yes,
Chairman?
I think we're ready.
Thank you. My second request is for a reclassification. Currently in my office, I have a position that is titled at this point Office Manager. It is currently a G12, and my current employee in that position is a 12P. I'm requesting a reclassification with a new title of Administrative Operations Manager, which is a current existing position in the city government. It's a G18. My current employee could be moved to an 18D, and it would be a budget neutral request. The reason I'm asking for this is for 3 reasons, and actually I'll take kind of the third one that's on the slide first, and that is to replace this position where it was approximately 15 years ago. A prior administration took the G18 position and decreased some of those duties and moved it to a G12 position. Since I've been in office, I have increased the duties of that position at least back up to where it used to be, and arguably higher than it was when it was the G18 previously, and I'm asking to replace it where it was those many years ago. Since I have added those duties to this position and I'm requiring this person to perform those duties, I think it's appropriate to move it where for the duties that are being performed, and I hope to be able to, in the future, fill this position with qualified candidates that are prepared and have the experience and the education that I need for them to be able to do these duties, and in order to do that, it would need to be a G18. But as I say, it's budget neutral. The person who's there now would simply move down to an 18D.
Council, what is your pleasure? We need to put it, if we're going to do it, we need to put it on the ad list in order to take the action, even though it's budget neutral, as she's saying. I believe that would be correct, Ms. Alexander?
That would be correct. And as I understand it, if you're saying we're saying now that it's budget neutral, and you're probably wondering why was it not included in the budget. And I think initially, when the position was reviewed by CSU, because currently the person in the position is a grade 12 administrative assistant, and the titling of the position as it was reviewed by CSU was that of an office manager. And that's, I guess, the role that the person plays in the district attorney's office. So it came back as a grade 14 from CSU as an office manager, because that is the grade level for our current office managers throughout the government. But as a DA, we've had further conversations. The administrative operations manager is more in line with the duties of the person in her office, and that is an existing position within the government. It is a grade 18. In fact, the reclassification would present a budgetary savings if the individual that's in that position is still retiring at the end of June, because the new person coming in would make less based on the pay scale, the different pay scale that we have. So it actually would result in a savings of $1,312. So $1,312 savings to reclassify the position from a grade 12P to a grade 18C.
What is your pleasure? You want to add that to that, put that on the add list, okay.
Thank you, Counselor.
Anything else?
That ends my request, except to say thank you.
I want to say to you and to Chief Deputy Culpepper, I forgot to say when the sheriff was in here, our process, as you may recall from years past, is that at our next meeting, our May 21st meeting, we will go through the add delete list and make decisions at that time as to what we're going to do. And typically, we just start at the start of the beginning of the list and go through. So you'll be about midway down that list. If you want to be here, it will be televised if you would rather stay in your office. I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that that's the process.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to all of you. Thank you for taking the time to listen.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we are back on track.
We have Councilor Davis.
Madam Budget Chair, if I may at this time, I'd like to, the mayor made a very valid point, and I've been thinking about it over the week. You know, we had one of the directors come to us and talk to us about salary savings. We had a very long talk on that discussion, and within that discussion, we found out that a majority of those salary savings, or not all of them, are in the fund balance. And what concerns me is that the requests that are being made for additional funding that would increase budgets in departments are coming out of fund balance. And right now, I'm not sure, I'm going to use the word, let's just say together, all the salary savings has been put in the fund balance, and I can't sit here and tell you how much that is, but I'm assuming it's a good portion of the 9+ days that's over the 60-day minimum, that bar that we've been working off of. And historically, we've always been very consistent in how we spent the fund balance, or utilized basically reserves, and they've always been for non-reoccurring expenses. We've always allowed departments, or we've been consistent the past several years because of limited resources, and allowing departments to reclassify within their budgets, and as long as they're staying within their budgets, that's fine if they can manage it, but we cannot add on to the departments for those reasons. Now that you know, we're dealing with decisions that's going to be asked for us to take money out of the fund balance, and we've always historically and wisely, financially, physically wisely, have used those for non-reoccurring expenses, such as capital items, which is one time, or bonuses, or emergency expenditures. And you guys know, I mean, we're going to have some emergency expenditures come up. You know, with the government center there, I cringe to think what's next. We've got a ton of capital needs that are going to have to take place, and you know, I don't know if we can wait a few years to ask the citizens to make that decision. And even at that, but we may be needing that money to operate, whether it's the jail or these other requests that are going to come. And then, you know, barring no catastrophic type of situation. So I just wanted to remind council that on the request that this year is a good year from the standpoint that health benefits and all have kind of stabilized. But that doesn't mean next year you come in and you're going to get $1 million bill to cover the employee's health care cost. Well, that's coming out of the reserve, and it's going to be a recurring expense, and boom, if you use up your reserves today, it's coming out of there. You're not going to have that tomorrow. So and then you're going to be forced to start making cuts. And, I don't think anybody wants to deal with that. But I'm not, I just wanted to say that I know there's a little bit of revenue that's come in, but most of that revenue, as my understanding, is really concerning me, that now we're stating that it's in the fund balance and it's basically salary savings. So if we're using that, the other problem we have, and I'm sure we're going to hear about it, is that we're telling, I said it last week about being consistent in how we use, how we deal with departments and their request for their salary savings. And so if we're being consistent in what we're saying across the board, then we need to be very, very careful there, because what we're doing here in making a decision and adding to someone's budget, it could be coming out of another department, their salary savings, and then that in essence penalizes a department for doing good, or they just can't fill spots, but we're using it somewhere else. I'm really concerned about that, to the point that that's why I'm even talking about it here. So I would hope that, in light of what the mayor said, and we haven't really we asked some questions today, some of these requests for increased budgets, positions, I asked the question, what did the executive administration, what did they say about it? And you kind of heard the answer, that it was not budget neutral. Well, we need to be thinking the same thing, because we're not sure what's on the horizon. And I would ask that we, Madam Budget Chair, if we could come up with I guess it would be a policy, a line. I would ask the staff to work on this as a control measure in the budgetary ordinance requirements, that we could come up with a detail of how we're going to be that consistency across all departments and how we're using salary savings and all, that we stick to that and make that a policy. That really concerned me, Mr. City Manager. You and I were having that conversation with the Director of Parks and Recs, and I had to come back and kind of say, wait a minute, we need to be a little more consistent in how we're doing this because of what we've said in the past. I think it needs to be etched in stone that everybody understands, and that would be a control measure. And I think that would be a great tool for the executive administration staff and the finance department to work off of, because it takes a lot of pressure. We're getting that pressure now. We're getting that pressure in requests, Mr. Mayor, and you know that. So, Madam Budget Chair, I just wanted to express that we had a little opening here after, what the mayor just commented on a little while ago.
Well, I appreciate you mentioned that, and frankly, we have had as policy in the past, and I think it's important, though, and we've seen the significance of being able to have that policy be somewhat flexible depending on the time and the economic climate, because for years there was no salary savings that could be used in the department in which it was saved. It was all going back into the fund balance, and then there'd be some prioritization during mid-year or maybe at the next year if we saw that it was becoming a trend as opposed to just a spike. And then as things got really, really critical and we were trying to keep from using fund balance to balance the budget, there was a decision made by the administration and the executive management team that, right now, because of where we are and trying to deliver the services, we do need to dip into some of the salary savings. And over the last several years, that's how we've made adjustments to try to address some compression and also address some starting pay, particularly with public safety. But you're right. I think as we are starting to get well, so to speak, we probably should look at asking the finance director, along with the city manager, to make a recommendation as to how salary savings be treated across the board. Because some of the really large departments obviously have a lot more salary savings. And it's kind of difficult to see all that go to the area in which it was generated. Jimmy? Thank you.
Councilor Crabb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, did I hear you right on the last item that I added to the list, that was actually going to result in salary savings, but not until June? Did I hear you correct?
Right, when the budget is effective, the 1st of July, there will be a salary savings of $1,312 for the request that was added to the add delete list. So
Okay.
it'll show up on next week's add delete report as a reduction. You'll see it on
As a
the-
reduction? Okay, that's, okay. I just wanted to make myself clear. Thanks.
Ms. Alexander?
Yes. So the next department on the schedule is the police department, and our chief of police, Mr. Ricky Boren, is here.
Welcome, Chief. Chief, as you're coming to the rostrum here, I want to tell you that those department heads that have gone before you have kept to schedule, and you're scheduled for 45 minutes, and while we won't turn your mic off, we might frown.
Well, I will breeze by some of the repetitious stuff that I have had in the past, because I think it's important for y'all to see the job that these officers do and have done to have as many vacancies as we have here in Columbus. As of yesterday, it's at 91 vacancies out of a 488-man department. And we have not cut many services. We've cut some of the services that are not as visual as other services that we have. But I've got a list today on other things that we're going to have to start looking at. And as you can see, last year, the 911 center picked up the telephone 510,000 times. Out of that, we actually had to send a police vehicle out 252,900 times. We worked, and I don't know how we got this number, 7,777 accidents and 3,191 additional accidents on private property. We've taken 62,000 reports. We have put 84,000 cases in front of a magistrate in recorder's court. We have issued 48,000 traffic citations, and we've arrested 10,800 individuals. Our dispatch times has, except for priority 1, has remained kind of in check. Priority 3 calls are the calls that we dispatch with blue light and siren, injuries, shootings, cuttings, fights, some alarms, that sort of call, 2.56 minutes. That is staying about the same as it has been in the past. Priority 2s are up just a little bit. Priority 1s are the calls where we're basically doing other people's work, like insurance companies, where a tree falls on a house, or somebody just wants to see a police officer for whatever reason. And those have been up for the last couple of years, and that's nothing in the world but shortages. When you don't have people to send, and you have to prioritize the scheduling of those calls. Excuse me. The next sheet are Part 1 crimes, 10-year trends. You're going to be impressed with this. We have constantly been going down on the numbers. You can see that, and you don't see 2009 here, but 2009 will come up later, where we had some 15,000 Part 1 crimes. This past year, we were down to 9,000 Part 1 crimes. If you look at the next slide, Part 1 crime reached a high in 2009 at 15,800 Part 1 crimes reported. It has decreased over the past 4 years. In 2018, we had 9,028 crimes reported for a 43% decrease in Part 1 crimes over a 10-year period. The lowest reported Part 1 crimes in recent history was in 2018. In 2018 was the lowest since 1983. The Columbus Police Department holds national and state recognition. We were awarded recert in CALEA, started it in 93, recerted again in the past 2 years, a 1999 GACP. We received our 8th accreditation award in 2017, which we also got the seal for a meritorious service department. In other words, a department where they will send people to train with us in order to complete their accreditations. We meet 463 standards every day in the Columbus Police Department. 5 recertification awards. To give you some idea, 703 agencies in the United States are certified, are accredited, and only 129 agencies out of 650 in Georgia are certified. Few of the community activities that we're involved in, and this takes a lot of man hours, and it's going to be some of these services that we're going to have to look at and not tie manpower up on if in fact there's 911 calls out there that has to be serviced. Staffing trends in 2018, we got 436 inquiries and/or applications for employment. Out of that, we hired 40 people. 43 resigned, 11 retired, 1 was terminated, 1 died on duty, and for a loss, or a total of 56, or a loss of a negative 16 in 2018 alone. Officer shortages today, out of 488, we're 91 officers short on the street today. We've got different approaches now for recruiting. We have policeapp.com. We're starting to go with 2 computers with a lot of stuff that we do. Virtual job fairs, where instead of actually being on the scene, we go into computer banks, or we'll allow the individuals, we pay them to put the potential applicants in front of computer banks, and then they can talk with our recruiters one-on-one. Fresh Desk software, we monitor this 7 days a week to 9 p.m. at night. Virtual aid campaigns is recruiting, and I know everybody's turned the computer on. You have a little pop-up saying, do you want to talk to this car dealer today, and here's a picture, his picture. Well, that same thing's happening with us now. Anybody that goes on our site, it comes up, and it comes up in Google, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Each campaign averages about 40,000 or reaches about 40,000 people. Now, the numbers look bad when you hire 40 people in a year, but reason for rejections is some of them just never follow up. They look on the computer, they'll fill out an application, and then I don't know if they forget about it or what they do, or they lose interest, or maybe they're required to file so many applications because of some type federal or state assistance. But the main thing is drug usage, deception about personal history on their application, deliberate omissions, social media issues, psychological or polygraph exam results. We can put them out the door.
Chief,
Yes, ma'am.
we have Counselor Barnes.
Well, I'm the chief because it's time. I want to, as y'all very well know, at the top of my list is support of CPD, but there's some really good information that he's going over, but I want him to be on track, because you put the pressure on him.
Well, I'm speeding this up. Normally I talk slower,
No.
and I'm a little bit taller.
No. But I want you to finish, but then I'm going to go back, because you covered some very interesting stats, Chief, so.
We've got to break the mold. We're out of the mold. We're off and running, and we're just getting started on some of the things, especially with computers. But the age group that we're trying to reach may not want to fill out an application in an office. They may not want to go to a job fair. Their days laying at home watching TV and eating might better service them if they can go online, go on a computer, and send us that information. And that's what we're working with today. Our exit interviews, everybody that goes out of that department, we make them fill out an interview sheet as to why they're leaving. The top #1 reason was salary and the STEP plan. The #2 is a record management system, which is the current software system that we've just gone to, and it's had a few problems, but we've worked through it. We have provided extra training, but it's a good system if it works correctly. So we're in the process of anybody that cannot function with this, we're making sure they can function with it. The retirement plan, insurance benefits, hours and schedule, we're finding that our new millennials only want to work during the day. They don't want to work all night long, and most of them don't want to work weekends. What we're having is, if there's an event, say for instance a family event, whether it be a sister getting married or whether it be mama's birthday or something like that, they want to be off. And not always, when you're 91 people short, can an individual be off. And they get a little perturbed with us, and over time, they decide they might want to go somewhere else. Advancement within the department, and our advancement has been really good over the past 2 or 3 years. Years of service. These are the people that are actually with the department today. I've got 153 people that's been there less than 5 years. 73 people in the 5 to 9 year, and y'all can see it. Y'all can see where we start having problems here. 15 to 19 years, 30 employees. 20 to 24 years, 26 employees. 25 to 29 years, 17 employees. 30 to 34, 27, and of course 35 to 39 is 5, all the way up to more than 45 years of service being 3 employees. In the middle of that, and I've got hopefully something that we hopefully will address this with in just a few minutes, but you can see where we are as far as age and the number of officers that we have with our department and where we're falling short. Alarm responses, and I'm happy to say that we've got a group of individuals that are seated now trying to figure out something to do with these alarms. These alarms are tying up too many people for too long, and when you go to a house and it's been, say, a fault of the alarm, and then the resident wants us to sit there until they can get there some hour and a half later, we just can't afford to do stuff like that anymore. In 2018, we had 22,443 total alarms. Out of that, 204 of those were valid.
Jeez.
The rest of them are false alarms because the cat's running around in the house, they forgot and didn't tell the maid or the child that the alarm was on, and they open the door. We respond, or even the owners feel like that they, or don't remember that they set an alarm, open the door in the middle of the night, and then we're headed that way. And I can never just send one car. I always have to send 2 cars because of the possibility that that individual is a good alarm and we've got a burglar or an armed robber in that house. So the second car is also sent. And 99.1 calls that we have for false alarm are in fact false alarms, excuse me. The second thing that we're looking at is private property accidents. In 2018, we went out on 3,191 private property accidents. Out of that, about an hour a call by the time they get there, do the report. Even though the report is done at a later time, during a time when they're, and I shouldn't say not doing anything because they always are, but either later that evening when they get off, they sit there in the office and they do this, which is now on computers, through the gear system. Everything that we do is computerized. We're looking at that. We're looking at that closely because there may be a need that come July this year, we may not respond to all of the private property accident calls anymore. Of course, if there's injury, if there's a DUI involved or something like that, then of course we're going. But where you just back into somebody in the parking lot of the grocery store, both cars are still functional, we're going to either tell you where to get a state form in order to fill that out and send it to the state of Georgia, or we'll respond and hand you a form, and then we'll get back in service. It's very simple. The forms are very simple, and I had it here just a minute ago. I was going to show it to you. But anyway, it'll be online. The 911 dispatcher will tell them how to get it offline, or we can have a car to just come by and hand you the report. It'll go up to as many as 3 vehicles being involved in the accident, and there's a summary on the back, and each driver would be required to fill one of those out. That would cut down on that many hours. Current salaries within the department, of course, in the door high school, $40,587, all the way up to a master's degree at $44,021. Benefits, I think we have decent benefits. We have good benefits within the department. And something that I've added to this, and I know Reuther's in the room back there somewhere, is the Health and Wellness Center. I think that the Health and Wellness Center is a golden apple that we have in this community. And when we go to places, job fairs or whatever else, I think that or most of our folks have been impressed with the fact that they can go to a clinic almost without an appointment, get there, no co-pays when you leave, and free prescriptions. You can't beat that. You cannot beat it. And I'm one that Reuther pushed and pushed and pushed, and within the past 2 or 3 weeks and a good cold, I went up there and was very impressed with the personnel and the treatment and the free prescriptions. Very impressed. Take home, yes, I'm sorry, ma'am. Oh, and I have. Starting officers take home pay. I want to show you this. This is what the officer begins with $40,587 in the door. And then you take out 8% pension, FICA, Medicare, federal tax, state tax, and then any insurance that he pays. And we'll look at a beginning officer in the door with only the silver plan for himself. And that officer actually goes home with $26,898. And if you take an officer in the door that already has a family and expect him to live on that money, he's out here working job after job after job in the community, trying to make the difference for him and his family. We need to address that. The budget request, of course, the 2019 total that has been requested, 2020 that's been requested, and the mayor's approved recommended budget, we're at 1.8% less than what we had last year when we came in the door in 2019. Major projects, and I don't see Pam in here, but the 911 Mitigation Assurance Program, the MAP plan, is coming on strong. It's doing really good. We have currently upgraded all the handheld radios, and they're in. They're actually on the shelves, being programmed, waiting to be issued to officers. The record management system is in, paid for, and functioning. I need some headsets. We'll get into those just a minute for the motor squad. E-ticketing. I'm pleased to say that we started actually working with the e-ticketing system this past week. Hopefully by the end of June, we will be into that full speed ahead with e-ticketing. This will save the officer time. You won't have to worry about legibility anymore because you can't read their writing when they're standing out in the rain writing a ticket. You will have the officers that can make a traffic stop and probably be back in service within 5 minutes of the time that vehicle is stopped and or warned and or ticketed. There's still a need to continue the replacement of paint and carpeting in the public safety building. Last year, you very graciously gave me $100,000 for that purpose. I got with the Department of Corrections, we painted the entire inside of our building for $10,000. $10,000. We're in the process now of replacing carpet that had been peeled up and held down with duct tape, and we're in the process of finishing that project now, but I need to continue. And that also has to do with at least one, if not two, of the precincts. We have a major project that we're looking at today, and this should have been a part of the MAP plan, but for whatever reason was left off. The enhanced data upgrade to the P25 radio system. Technology is present on the radios, but we don't have, for lack of a better term, the gizmo that's inside the 911 center to make it functional. Technology will allow our walkie-talkies. We can already track the cars. I can tell you where all the cars are, how fast they're driving, whether or not they got their seat belts on. I can tell you anything you want to know about the car. But once they get out of that car, you no longer have a trackability of that officer. Officers' lives have been in danger. They're still at danger anytime they get out and chase an individual from a scene. For example, an incident that happened about a month ago where an officer chased 2 armed robbers. He ended up tasing one of the robbers. They went down. The bad guy broke the tase, broke the tethers, got up, jumped on the officer. The officer continued to chase him. They ended up out off Amos Street behind a house. The officer, again, was trying to communicate his location, but after his radio had become non-functional because of the mic cord that was ripped off the officer's uniform, the guy was beating the officer, he was gouging his eyes, and he was attempting to get his gun out of his holster. Fortunately, our 911 center put cars in the area. They responded to the area. They surrounded the area and then started moving into the area when they heard the loud hollering going on behind the house on Amos Street, and they got to the officer that was still fighting with the individual. That's at a cost of $341,482.
So you're asking to go ahead and add this at this point? Okay. Ms. Alexander?
Fleet maintenance, and I heard on the way over here, and I was not a distracted driver, but I was listening on the radio to the sheriff's presentation. And for some reason, I think that she had most of my stuff in her presentation, because you're going to hear it again, but that's a joke. Pursuit vehicles. We have 136 cars that meet the mileage criteria, 200 that meets the years criteria, and 133 vehicles in the fleet today that meet both criteria for replacement. I have a Pursuit Tahoe, or 4, I think I combined them to 4. One of them is a patrol vehicle, blue and white, and the other 3 are vehicles, fugitive vehicles, ID vehicles that go out of town on a regular basis, take long trips, bring bad guys back to Columbus into the Muskogee County Jail. Those cars or those vehicles are at the high points of 160+ thousand. One of them is already into the 200,000 mile range, and these cars are still going out on the highway, still making trips. That is Motor Squad. We're doing real good on motors. Y'all have always helped me along with the motors. We're doing good on those. Don't need any this year unless we have a major catastrophe with one of them, and I hope we don't. I'm not asking for any police vehicles that are unmarked, meaning your investigative vehicles, even though we are 3 of those that meet the criteria to be replaced. I am asking, and I'll get there in just a minute, for some of the blue and whites to be replaced, as well as the 4 Tahoes to be replaced that meet the criteria. And then again, I know you've already heard this, but my auto parts and supply line item is over again this year, and it's basically because of keeping these old, broken down vehicles up and running as safely for our officers, as safely for the community as we can. And we have looked at an average of $575,000 in 15 for the line item of cost and parts supplies. In 16, $582,000. In 17, $624,000. And in 18, $610,000 as the amount of monies that we have overspent, or not overspent, excuse me, that we have spent for the vehicles that were there. But we had only been approved $412,500 at any given time. So I'm asking.
And I know you and I have had talks, so I'm going to cut to the quick on this here. For the vehicles, just ask me, what are you asking for as far as vehicles?
I'm asking, I'll get that, just if you just give me just 1 minute.
Sure.
I'll get to it.
Go ahead.
Okay. You want me to give it to you now?
No, go ahead on, but when you finish it.
Oh, sure, yes.
I'm going to put what you need on the atlas.
Okay.
I had a lady tell me it's a darn disgrace. Now I'm going to tell you, what damn is in the Bible. It's a damn disgrace, the way some of the vehicles look coming in. I mean, that's disgraceful.
Well, we keep them clean.
And
And
I know
keep
you
them
come year
maintained.
after year after year.
Sure.
But we need to start doing the right thing. So I'm going to let you finish, but I want to know, because whatever you need for vehicles, I'm putting on the atlas.
Okay, thank you. But I need $198,400 added to that line item to bring us up where we need to be as far as our fleet maintenance cost on that one line item. Because, I got Angelica sitting here, but correct me if I'm wrong, but once we go into the negative numbers on that, then they start taking money out of other areas like fuel and all with the vehicle, and I can't afford that. I can't afford to be up here asking y'all in an off year or off budget time to give me more monies for fuel. The Councilor Barnes, I have asked for 50 cars, pursuit cars, but 25 of those have already been approved.
Okay.
So in this budget, for recommendation or for proposal, they've been approved. So I'm asking for 25 extra cars to go on that line item, and then the 4 Tahoes. The 4 Tahoes, one being a Pursuit blue and white, and 3 being the vehicles that that stay on the road all the time for the Columbus Police Department, either the ID unit or my fugitive units that could go to California tomorrow to pick up a unit or a prisoner and bring them back.
And Ms. Alexander, from what I understand from Councilor Barnes before, he wants to put the 25, the 1 Tahoe and marked and the 3 unmarked on the ad list, if you would.
Because you need 4 pursuit vehicles. Is that
And
what
those
you're
are
saying?
pursuit, yes.
In addition to the other 25. is
The
that correct?
25.
Right.
Yes,
That
that's
is-
what I'm.
that is
that's what I'm-
correct.
So a total of 29 vehicles.
Now, I'm going to start getting into some ideas here, coming off the cuff, and y'all may laugh, but we sit around.
Hold just a minute, Chief. Councilor Davis.
Just a point of clarification on the ad list there. Is that, the fund, would that be on the lease program, or would it be on
Right, it would
cash
be,
on cost?
it would be a part
basis?
of the lease.
I do have some salary savings this year, but I got.
Wait. Let's have Ms. Alexander answer Councilor Davis's question.
Well, my assumption would be this would be a part of the lease program, these 29 vehicles that he is requesting.
If approved,
If approved,
it would be part
it
of
would be
the
a part of the
lease
lease program.
program.
Right, so the cost of that addition, the annual lease estimate is $248,611 for the additional 25. For the additional 4 Tahoes, $50,950. That's the 5-year lease amount. So that's the annual amount for 5 years. One point of clarification on the request that was added by Councilor Huff, the $341,482, that is a 5-year commitment.
Right.
As well as the budget decrease that the chief mentioned previously, that is primarily due to the pension contribution being less this year. So every budget, as far as personnel, essentially went down.
Well, I mean, I don't know where we get $3 million from, but I do, the lease program seems like the way to go. Is that's going,
Yeah.
Councilor Barnes, you okay with that under the lease program? 25 under the lease
I
program.
want to give him,
Yeah.
I want to give the CPT the vehicles and the
And you have what else? You have 4,
SUVs.
4 SUV, Pursuit SUVs.
And that's when I asked about your
Pursuit,
salary
25.
savings.
Yes, sir. I do have salary savings.
You do have salary
There's
savings.
a question in the number on those salary savings, but the best I can come up with is somewhere just a little less than $1.3 million.
That-
We've got a number of people in queue, so
So if you cancel
Councilor
my.
Davis, are you, wait a minute,
Yeah,
Pop.
but
are we on
Councilor
we're on the
Davis, are-
same page with, it's under the lease program, right? Is that?
Yes,
Okay, I'm good.
okay.
now to answer my question.
I'm sorry, you're not next.
But I haven't stopped. I haven't stopped, I'm still asking. What about the salary? So can we do the 4 SUVs under salary savings is what I'm asking?
I'm sorry, you were not recognized, Counselor
What was
Barnes.
who were you talking to at first?
Mr. Davis.
You were talking to me at first, and I didn't get my question answered.
It's okay.
I didn't get my question answered.
Go ahead.
So we're going to go with order. Let's go in order here. That's my question. I said, can we use that salary savings for the 4 SUVs? That's my question I've asked a couple of times already.
On my sheet, I made a recommendation for that, but that's going to have to be up to,
I'm asking.
So you're asking if you can use the salary savings immediately or in the proposed budget?
He needs vehicles, city manager.
So,
In whatever way we could get those vehicles for CPD,
Yeah.
I'm asking you and the finance
Yeah.
person,
certainly,
can he use salary savings to do that?
if this council says so,
Okay. Well, that's what I'm saying.
okay.
And that's what I'm asking.
Yes.
Now, if we can, I want them placed on the ad list.
Well, if you're talking about salary savings, Councilor, Madam Chair, if I may.
So that was, I'm fine.
So,
Okay,
so-
now I understand, I have my question answered. I understand. Then that's good, that was my question.
I was just,
Counselor Woodson.
Go ahead, Isaiah, finish your thought.
well, I was just trying to be clear with Councilor Barnes. If
Sure.
you're talking about salary savings in the current budget that we would bring back before the end of the fiscal year to purchase the vehicles that you were mentioning, is that what you're talking about?
Want to pass me again, say again?
So you ask if we could use salary savings.
To pay.
And so the question is, are you referring to the current fiscal year's salary savings to purchase these, 4 vehicles? There were,
29 vehicles.
29? I was just trying to be clear on what
Yes.
you're asking. Because if you are, it wouldn't be on the add delete list in the proposed budget. You'd be trying to use the current money, and I was just trying to be clear. And then the other thing I wanted to make, to remind you to be mindful that the vehicles that we're talking about on GMA lease purchase, we're talking about the GMA lease purchase, but she's got to check with GMA after we leave here today to make sure that we have the capacity to use the GMA lease to purchase, if you decide the 29 for police and the 15 for the sheriff and however many else, you may be talking about 45 or 50 vehicles. She's got to verify that we have the capacity with GMA lease to lease all those vehicles, and she doesn't know that at the moment. She's recording it, assuming that we might have the capacity, and so she'll verify that. And so if we do, fine. If not, we're going to need a backup plan. Just want to make that point.
I'm good.
Counselor Woodson.
Yes, I had a question, because the chief mentioned about his fleet maintenance costs
yes, ma'am.
and parts and repair, and you're saying that you need $198,000
That is correct.
in order to
That will bring me up to average. Yes, ma'am.
average, and that is for repair of vehicles? It has nothing to do with the replacement vehicles?
No, ma'am, it does not.
Okay. Go ahead, Angelica, can you add that fleet maintenance cost on the ad list? Can you add this fleet maintenance cost for parts and supplies?
$198,000 for fleet maintenance.
And $40.
And Madam Chair, if I may just make one more point that I know is probably clear, but I just want to make sure that on the 1.89 reduction that the chief referred to as budget is less than the operating budget for police was not decreased, and it may have gone up 20,000. It went up 20,000, and so the 1.89 reduction in the total budget has to do absolutely only with the reduction in the pension cost. So I don't want anyone watching or listening to think that the police budget, operating budget, was reduced by by 1 penny. It went up by 20,000. And only because of pension, that 1.89, it appears is less. So I want to make that very clear.
Thank you, Mr.
Pardon?
I'm sorry, can in the future, when you have something like that and it has to do with like the pension plan or something, can you put it on the presentation in case the public didn't hear you or somebody goes back and looks so that know that we didn't cut his budget?
I know you're talking to the chief about that.
Oh, I'm sorry,
That's his
Chief. In your
presentation.
presentation next time, can you put that 1.89 is due to the pension plan?
Okay.
So that people don't think that we are cutting your
Sure.
budget, because we're
And
not, it's the pension plan.
And the 20,000 was a result of us changing state law to where we now have to actually budget money for informants. And that was a 20,000 addition to the budget based on a Georgia law.
Okay, and I would just appreciate it if it's on there, because sometimes people are not watching this, they'll go back, they'll
Sure.
look at the presentation, and we all support CPD all the time.
there-
I mean,
there's no
every
doubt.
time
There's
you
no
guys
doubt about
ask something, we're like jumping through hoops to help you, so I don't want people to think that we're trying to hurt
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
CPD.
Councilor Huff.
Yes,
Thank you, ma'am.
Madam Finance Director, on the enhanced data upgrade to the P25 radio system, cost being $341,482, repeat what you said last about it being a 5-year commitment,
Right, it'll be that amount for the next 5 years.
that amount for, okay, and this is for the safety of our officers, correct?
Right, that's
Right.
correct.
Correct.
Yeah, it's a safety issue according to the chief, I thought I heard. Okay.
Right, I just wanted to clarify, if it's something that's ongoing, I feel it's my duty to let you know
It
that
is,
it's
it
going to
is.
be.
I just wanted to make sure I understood, because I can't put a price on the safety of the people, so, thank you.
Got it.
Councilor Davis.
Chief, you asked for the maintenance cost and all on the vehicles and all, the fleet maintenance and costs and parts. If we are able to secure those 54 vehicles, and I don't know if you've gotten all your vehicles from in the past, I'm guessing you are.
We put the first group of those cars that were ordered in this budget on the street yesterday, and that was only 5 or 6.
You did what? Say that
Those,
again.
those were the ones that were approved by council in the last budget, meaning the first of this budget. When those 30 vehicles were approved, we put the first group of those cars on the road yesterday.
Okay, all right, you done thrown me off here a little bit, but why does it take 10 months to get your vehicles after we approve them at this council?
There was a whole plethora of things with this group of cars, I promise you. It went all the way from the times that they were billed out, the RFPs, the dealer that was selected, the work that he did, having to return the cars for other things like paint that was not correct when the cars got here. And the last thing has been a factory recall on all of the vehicles to where they had to sit until the recall work had been done. And now we're just now starting to roll again with getting them on the
I
street.
had no idea, but if you're on a lease program, I guess as soon as you put in an order with a lease, it should just make sense to me that it's expedited a lot faster than it would be on a purchase, so,
Madam Chair,
and not as costly or putting a strain on the budget, let me just say it that way. But anyway, I'm hoping that, Ms. City Manager, like you said, I'm hoping people want to do business with us. I'm sure they're hungry and we got good credit. I'm hoping that lease program I'm just hoping that lease program's going to work.
Mr. City Manager.
Well, and certainly we hope so. And you know, there's a demand all over the country for those particular vehicles. And I think Chief has been lucky in the past years because he's called and said, look, they got 45 vehicles sitting on the lot up here, and I've told them to hold them for me, and we were able to make it work. So, I mean,
Sure.
he got them, it's been expedited in the past because he went on his own and found them on a lot. But I mean, if you just go through the order process, you know, because they're in demand all over the country, I mean, there's a backlog and they're not delivered.
Well, let me ask this. If we approve this and it goes through, I mean, you're going to get right on and start ordering these vehicles, right?
Oh, well, that's not totally up to me, but yes, sir.
Okay, all right. And last I want to say, Councilor Barnes, when we were talking a little while ago, you know, I think I stated it earlier, even though it's salary savings, the salary savings is all in the fund balance. So we are spending fund balance money. Everything we do, we're spending fund balance. So that comes down on the days because that's where all the salary savings goes. But the key, again, goes back to the salary savings. But once you start filling those positions, that money's out the window, and then you've really only got a one-time, annual amount of money, the revenue that you have to work with because you're using it again on filling positions. So we don't know if this is going next year, if they can't fill positions and, you know, the same amount will be in the pot. If they fill the positions, then all that money disappears and, you know, and then you're back dealing with the 60-day mark again. So just wanted to add that to it.
Chief, I'm going to tell you that your time is shortening, and we do have in time, we've got a number of people still in the audience to present, so.
I'll be glad to again talk fast in
please.
case there's questions. I
understand.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Employee referral incentive, this is thinking out of the box. This is thinking big time. I'm going to ask for approval from salary savings to be able to spend $100, give $100 to any person that brings a qualified officer to us, and give them another $500 if the officer has been there 6 months, and another $500 if they've been there 1 year, for a total of $1,100 incentive from salary savings to attempt to get officers in the door. Pay increase for all officers within the police department, and I'm going to ask for a 10% across-the-board raise for all police officers. I realize that's pie in the sky, but I would like to see a group of counselors, someone to research and study the cost or the salaries within the Columbus Police Department as compared to even our area or other areas. We've got people as far away as Washington State that's coming in here hiring our officers. We've lost officers to several local areas. We're starting to have competition within our own city to hire these officers. We've got...
Chief, let me interrupt you just a minute. You had said that you were listening as you came over. One of the things that Sheriff Tompkins
Yes, ma'am.
proposed was a study.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think we've asked that be done. So if all of our LEO organizations can come together, we need to talk with not only the people who are knowledgeable about payroll and salaries and that kind of stuff, but who are knowledgeable about trends and what's happening in other parts and how we're being impacted and so forth. So I'm going to ask you and the sheriff and, you know, whomever else, let's get them together and see if we can't
Well, we're ready to
put
get
something
started
together.
with that. We've got our average from LaGrange to even someone else that told me today is $45,000 in the door. That's an average. Within the past, the Chamber of Commerce did a public speech where they say that the average salary in Columbus, Georgia is $45,000 a year. We start at 40. I know that you could probably go all the way up to the people that's gotten master's degrees and all and maybe get it a little bit closer too, but we need to have a minimum of $45,000 in the door for these officers, but we can't stop there. We have to go all the way through and go all the way up with it. We can't just take and identify because of reasons like compression, reasons like the individuals that may not stay too long. We need to address the entire department, and it needs to be done sooner than later.
And it not only needs to be salary, it needs to be salary and pension and benefits and da-da-da-da-da-da-da, all of those things.
And another recommendation, again, this year, is to reduce the contribution to the pension fund from 8% down to 4% for the officers that it affects, and it only affects 178 of the officers within the department, the ones that's been hired since 2012. Proposed health care benefit, the same thing that I asked you about last year, is to the city to pay for or give the officers, each officer that has insurance with the city, to give them the silver plan free. That would be a savings of $73 every 2 weeks per officer. My intentions here today are to put more money in their pockets and to look at the little things that can put money in their pocket. Maybe little things, it's not a good description on that. But anything over that, whether they have the gold plan, whether they have a family plan, whether they have dental and vision, has to come out of their own pocket. This is in the door, free health care, silver plan only. We need to increase the clothing allowance for plainclothes officers within the department. We currently give them $300 every 6 months. And I'd like to increase that to $500 every 6 months. Clothes are extremely expensive. We monitor their dress, and we require them to dress in a certain manner. And we need to bump that money up. We've been in that, and it affects 103 officers. We've been in that $300 range for probably 10-plus years. And clothing and other things have gone up since then. In reference to the pay reform steps, we started at 5 years. 5 years of service, $1,300, and we went up from there, 7, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30. And we recently went up to $3,500 per year for, once they reach that, to get a pay reform bump. I'm asking today that that be brought down from 7 years to 5 years, so we can address the people that are in the area where we're losing the most people. And that would be for 21 officers, and it would come at a cost of $46,200 in order to bring it down from the 7-year range to 5 years. And that would give officers more money in their pockets, quicker, sooner, and hopefully it would help us with retention. Now, this is the biggie, and I know that you're going to frown at me on this one.
Before you go, we have Councilor Davis.
I'll talk real fast on this one. I got two more slides.
Go ahead.
Proposed property tax exemption. I'm making a recommendation here today that if you're a police officer with the city of Columbus, Georgia, and you live in this county for the duration of time that you live in this county, you would not pay property taxes. Now, I'm not saying there may be a limit on this. I'm not saying go to Green Island and buy your house. I'm saying on an average house, we could set limits to where hopefully we could better recruit people from the outside. Now, in talking to the officers, and I've got 100 officers that live in another county in Georgia or either Alabama, they say it's cheaper to live there, taxes are cheaper, other things are cheaper, and I need to get them back to this county. If I can get them back here, they can take advantage of the take-home car program, which will save them a little money. And this, I don't know how expensive that this would be. I mean, I'd have to talk with our tax commissioner to get some kind of idea without touching each officer and asking him if, in fact, he lives in an area. They may live in an apartment. It may not touch them at all. But the ones that live in houses, we want them to come here. We want them to purchase property in Muskogee County. We want them to live in Muskogee County, to work in Muskogee, not to work, not mandate. But if they do, then we want to help them. We want to bring them back from Harris County and Meriwether County and Talbot County and Russell County and Lee County and all the other counties around us and bring them back to Columbus. We have 35 officers that live in somewhere other than Muskogee County in Georgia, and we have 65 officers that live within the state of Alabama. And I have to give a nod to our take-home car committee, because I've been there, I've talked with them, I've communicated with them. They have our best interest at heart, and there's no doubt in my mind that within the next short period of time, we will have a decision on at least the take-home cars in the state of Georgia to counties that border Muskogee County. And I appreciate that. They will appreciate that, but I'd like to get them all back in Muskogee County if I could. Councilor Davis, I'm sorry.
Councilor Davis.
Thank you, ma'am. So I want to go back to the slide on the current reform, and let me just try to quickly preface what I'm going to.
I'm sorry, which one are you going back to?
The current proposed increase to pay reform step.
Oh,
there it
okay.
is, right there. There it is, right there. Wow. This has been something that this council has really been trying to work on. We've started in steps, and every time we take a step, everybody else gets 3 steps in front of us. And look, it's a great economy. It's a tremendous economy out there. There's jobs everywhere. If it's not the State Department trying to take your officers, it's the Border Patrol, it's the federal government, all the other security agencies out there, the Highway Patrol. I just noticed in Atlanta, everybody in Atlanta is trying to take each other's officers, but it's not just their officers, it's their upper leadership. And that's what you're talking about here is the upper leadership. And then it's not even outside of Muskogee County, it's right here in Muskogee County it's being done this year. And you saw the chief, what the requirements are for these police officers to go through. That's what we talk about. You know, we talk about parity and responsibilities and everything, but that's a heck of a list to try to meet. And I don't think they just give you a badge for something like that. You got to earn it. I, for one, I may be, and this council may be one of few, but I think at the time the 100 police officers was a novel idea. And it was a great way to try to deal with some of the issues here in our community, the crime-related issues, but I just don't think we're ever going to fill those spots. I really don't with what I see happening, and it's just, and even at that, I don't see people lining up to sign up to be a police officer. So it goes back to that limited manpower and financial resources and how we get the most out of most production out of what we have. You know, that's a tough one, but this council, whether I'm here, whether you're here, this is not going away. And it is with the big C word, you know, crisis. It not this year, next year, whatever. Eventually, if we start losing leadership, I mean, I'm just going to say it, you know, the skunk's out on the table. We lose leadership, we're good luck. I mean, it's going to be hard to get the right people. And we've been really blessed to have good people in CPD, Sheriff's Office, Sheriff's Department, and Marshal's Department, across the board, Fire Department, Fire and EMS. I mean, we got good people, but, I mean, like you said, it's not just CPD, it's the others, the pressure to live. And I don't know what else to do, but to try to deal with this, you got to deal with it in an expedited manner. And Chief, could you give up? You know, I'd be willing to put the reform out there because I think it's, again, you know, I took a stance on this last year, and the council did as well. We were trying to address that middle leadership issue that we're having, and you know, I'd be willing to do that, but it would be giving up a position, another position out of those 100 officers. Sure. I think 40, I don't know, is it 50? What's a position equal to? Cost savings wise, or excuse me, cost. 52, 50 plus? Total?
She's getting that number for you.
I think one position would cover this request. Is this accurate, what's being displayed up here?
Well, including the benefits, it would be $56,895 based on the 21 people that's listed in the presentation.
And
So the
yes.
cost would be $56,895. So one position.
spot.
One
And
position.
one unfilled
Before we do
position.
that, our attorney wants to address on this issue.
No, back to the exemption slide.
Oh, okay,
so.
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chief.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am, or yes, sir. We
I'll
would
add
give
it
up-
on there, but I want
We
to
would give up
know.
the pay on an unfilled position at this time
Right.
in order to get that and get it back in and start working in the middle area of where we need the help.
And Madam Chair, just a question, clarification, because I was going to make the point earlier, you talked about a comprehensive pay plan study for public safety. And so I've asked the finance director to get with the HR director and figure out the cost for that study. And
Wait, before you get into all of that, in the interest of time.
Sure.
Let's talk about that at another time.
Well-
We just know that we want to take a look at a comprehensive plan, we think. We haven't even taken that.
okay, so that's a
position yet.
referral, because I just wanted to say, if you were trying to do it in the upcoming fiscal year, it's going to be a budget issue, and we needed to figure out how
It
much.
may be, I understand that. Okay.
Well, I'm going to add this, and it would be funded by one position out of the 100 officers. But, Madam Budget Chair, these are you post some ideas I've never heard of, we kind of in the wind, but, there's some great ideas out here that need to be looked at, but that could potentially be utilized,
As part of this study that we
well, the study or across the board, even dealing with other departments. But I do want to go on record as saying, look, the only reason that I would even offer this or try to deal with it, because I understand the competitive pressures that's out there that's happening right now, and I view this as a crisis. I'm probably getting an argument with somebody or some of the other departments, that's okay. But when I look at it, I keep track of other departments and all, where they're at with their manpower and their leadership and all. It is not like CPD. And that part, I would challenge anyone to say it's different. Because I understand that the middle leadership is leaving left and right, and you ought to be concerned about that. I just don't see that in the other departments right now. They've got their challenges. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if you don't address this, there ain't no turning back. You're going to have a hard time, and then you're going to have to tune up the notch of an increase in a utilization of revenue maybe 3 or 4 times to get them back, even get them to Muskogee County. So we can't lose them. Thank you, Madam Budget Chair.
Mr. Fay.
Okay, just back to the exemption piece a minute, Chief. The council would have to put that on the list for the legislative delegation to address, because they don't have the authority to do it. It would take a general statewide amendment, possibly a constitutional amendment, but that could go on the list.
Councilor Allen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief Bourne, I appreciate your leadership.
Thank you.
Very good presentation. Just wanted to touch on the take-home car piece of this. We are looking and working towards allowing what you've requested. We have some hurdles we've got to get over. One is the cost. And then the other part, working with the mayor, we're trying to set up some meetings on a state level for border communities to allow us to go over into Alabama. As you know, the sovereign immunity is an issue in Alabama. And,
yes, sir.
It's something we've got to work through, and it's going to take time. So, but we're working towards getting there. So we have good intentions. Just wanted to let you know that. The committee has been working hard for 6 months and very, very dedicated. And we want, I think, some state level folks are coming to town in the next several weeks, and we're trying to line up meetings with them.
Sure.
But just want to let you know we're working towards that to try to meet this one request.
Yes, sir.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Chief.
One more comment?
I got one.
Go ahead.
I want you to go back to what I was going to, Part 1 crimes. Just help me to understand it real quick. Now, the way, yeah, Part 1 crime, 10-year trend. Now, the way I'm interpreting that, and just correct me if I'm wrong, I see where the Part 1 crimes have really decreased.
Correct.
But at the same time, so has the number of officers that you have on the street. So that tells me that the officers are chasing lights each shift. Now, am I interpreting that correctly?
You are.
That's the one thing I didn't quite think. And that's horrendous. If you look at it, you can really, that shows you in a snapshot how hard the officers that you have are working to see something like that. And so, yeah, you're right, we do need to do something. Have some kind of a study, I don't care how we do it, but we need to do something here, because the officers that you have are going to get burned out. And then the second thing is that on your chart, you don't have to turn to it. Thank God for the officers, your staff that you have here that stayed for the long haul, because it doesn't have a darn thing to do with money or with salary. It does have a lot to do with the ones here that are right there, commitment to the Columbus community, when you just look at that. But we're, like Glenn put it out, we're headed for trouble, big time, because we're going to be losing the experienced officers. That's it. I just wanted to make that comment.
Ms. Alexander, would you go over, I know that the chief has a summary sheet here. Would you go over and remind us of the things that we have added from his request at this point?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. So in summary, Councilor Barnes has placed on the ad list the Pursuit sedans as well as the Tahoes. The cost of those will be a part of the GMA 5-year lease program if we're able. For the 25 sedans, the annual lease cost is $248,611. For the 4 Tahoes, the annual lease amount is $50,950. Councilor Huff has added to the list the enhanced data upgrade to the P25 radio system. That is a 5-year commitment at $341,482 per year. Councilor Woodson has added to the list $198,040 for the auto parts and supplies. Councilor Davis has added to the list the pay reform adjustment for the year 5 step. That cost is $56,895, and it is it is funded through the use of one police officer position. And that was all I had.
Okay. Anything else? Councilor Huff?
Chief, thank you. Appreciate the presentation. Always good to see you. I had a conversation the other day, and they asked me to ask you next time I saw you, are there any plans to put the gang task force back together in the future?
We already have a gang task force, we just don't call them that. We've got individuals now. We're doing more with gangs today than we did back when we had people running around with gang task force on the back of their jackets. We're doing more today with gangs than they did at that point in time. The only thing that we're not doing today, we just don't have time to have the neighborhood parties and the other things that they were doing there. I've got a man in the room here today. He's my lieutenant in charge of intelligence with intelligence-led policing. He can tell you about anything to do with the gang members and associates within this department. And he's been called on to even teach some of the federal agencies in our area with this information. He works close with the U.S. Attorney for this district. He monitors the individuals, and if and when they're arrested for whatever, it meets a certain point spread, they go to federal court. They don't go to local courts, and they get a mandatory sentencing.
Okay. I appreciate that. That's
Yes,
good
sir.
update for them to
Thank you.
hear.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Councilor Woodson.
Chief, thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
Truly enjoy your presentation.
Well, thank you.
And I appreciate my colleague clarifying about Georgia to Alabama, because we're trying. We're trying
I know
very,
that,
very
and-
hard, and it's
I
an
have
uphill.
talked with y'all, and I appreciate what y'all have done.
So I don't want you to think, or anybody think that we don't
We
care.
don't.
We're not.
No,
We're
ma'am, we
trying.
don't.
It's just some things are out of control. I saw, I don't go on Facebook and social media too much, but it wasn't too long ago, I did go in there, and I seen somebody say that, and I didn't comment because I didn't want to get in a battle back and forth.
Sure.
But I want to see if you can clarify for us or tell us later. Someone posted under that we had 350 gangs, and they said that they were, that wasn't individuals, that were gangs. And that's so hard for me to believe that we have
I cannot-
350 different groups of gangs in Columbus, Georgia.
I cannot answer that question standing here because everybody that goes into the county jail calls themselves something, or they say that they're a member of something. Some of them are self-professed.
Okay.
Some of them do it because of security. Once they get there, we're working with the county jail, the Department of Corrections in the state of Georgia, with all of our community leaders to make those determinations. Sometimes you'll have a so-called gang, and they will splinter or sell off and come in and rename themselves. But at any point in time, the council would like to have a presentation on that, we can make that happen.
Yeah, I would like to, because I don't want misinformation to go out in our community.
Sure.
And I thought that was very big, miscommunication. I'm like, that's way, I don't even think Chicago or California has that many.
Well,
So I was like, but again, I didn't respond because I didn't want to get into a combative situation back and forth. But I don't know about any of my other colleagues, but I like to be educated more because I don't even think Chicago or California, any of them have that many. How can we have that many?
we'll either do it as a group, or you're welcome to come to my office at any
Okay.
time, and we'll sit down with you and go through that information.
Thank you, Chief. I
Yes,
appreciate it.
Anything else, Chief?
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to say that the red flag's on the pole. It's on the pole. Warning, that we're getting off farther than we need to be as far as these vacancies are concerned. So I appreciate what y'all do every day. Every time I have ever came to you, called you, talked with you, you've always helped me and the Columbus Police Department. This is your police department. This department belongs to y'all. It belongs to the citizens of our community, and we're going to do everything that we can do to make sure that we respond to those 911 calls.
And Chief, as one of the people who was involved in one of those 7,777 traffic accidents this last year, you know how reassuring it is when you hear the siren coming, and you're in an accident and you hear the siren coming, and then you see them turn the corner, and you know the Columbus Police Department is here, and I'm okay.
And we'll handle it.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if you were in the room when we talked about the process that we will vote on this
Yes, ma'am.
next week. It's a 9 o'clock meeting, but we will not be at the police department at 9 o'clock, so.
And is that on a Thursday? Is it, what?
No, it's Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
It's
All right, yes,
Tuesday.
ma'am. Well, we'll be here too.
Good,
All right.
okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair, I just want to join you all in thanking the chief. Anytime I've called him, he's there. In fact, I sent him a text this morning, and, he's just always Johnny on the spot, so thank you, sir.
Like I say, we take care of our citizens. All citizens.
Thank you, Chief. Ms. Alexander.
Yes, ma'am. Next department on the agenda for presentation is our fire and EMS. And our Fire Chief Jeff Myers here, and he will be presenting. Somebody else? Oh,
Chief, as you're coming to the microphone, I will also say to you and to your command staff, it was just a couple of weeks ago, a month or so ago, that I had to call an EMS, and it's the same thing with them as it was with the police department. When I heard that siren and I saw that ambulance and saw those guys coming through the door, I'm okay.
Well, now I was going to
I'm
ask you,
taken
when you
care of.
heard those sirens at the accident, did we get there first or did they? But I'm not going to.
Yes, you did. Okay, Chief. We're trying to be cognizant of time commitments and so forth, so we'll try to keep you on schedule.
So I have 45?
You have
30?
27 minutes.
27 minutes. Well, I'm going to try to.
No, I'm sorry. You do have 45 minutes.
I do have 45 minutes. No? Okay. It won't take that long.
But don't feel compelled to take all 45 if you don't need to.
Well, good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of council, the committee, Mayor, City Manager. I want to start out today, it's not really in a presentation, but we actually did a little something different. We did our own proposed budget request letter this year when we turned in our budget. And the two areas that the staff came up with that we thought we needed to focus on was to meet the city's approved standards of cover and place a special focus on cancer prevention and response reliability. So our budget included some $4 or $5 million in emergency vehicles, ambulances, engines, ladder trucks, staff vehicles. I don't believe any of those were submitted in the budget, but there is still a need for that. So as we go through the budget, we'll talk some more about some of those items. We had asked for some 300 some odd sets of turnout gear. I believe there is some in the proposed budget before you. Also, in part of that initial request was two pay reform options. One similar to what law enforcement has received in Columbus. The Sheriff's Department, Police Department have received some type of pay reform over the last few years and evidently are still receiving that. Fire and EMS, as a public safety agency, has not been calculated into that. And again, like other agencies, we're losing top-level supervisors. We lost a battalion chief. We're losing sergeants that are going to fulfill their dreams, either better pay or, you know, they want to be in charge someplace else. And we support them in doing that. But we'd like for them to come back to us if the road isn't as smooth on that side as they thought. So within that first year, if they want to come back, we allow them to reapply and we'll hire them on the spot. So that does happen. It's not happening as much now as it used to. Our projections are by the end of October, we'll be 40 personnel short. So to put that in context, if we had been approved as a department some number of additional personnel, and let's just say for conversation's sake that number was 100, come October we would be 140 personnel short. It's getting very difficult to find qualified personnel that can not only be state certified firefighters but also National Registry EMTs and hopefully move on to paramedic. Got departments again all over the country that they're coming to get our folks. We've got them local that are getting our folks that pay a lot more. I don't know about their benefits at all, but looking at their pay, there's just no way we'll ever be able to compete with that. So we just hope they fill their ranks quickly from departments outside of this region.
And Chief, I'm not sure if you were in the room when we were talking about this comprehensive public safety plan, analysis plan, but Ms. Alexander, as you're making notes, I do think we need to include all of our public safety departments in this, this study. So the fire EMS should also be included in this study, whatever we're going to do.
And I'd also ask not only to be included in the study, but have representation as that study's going on to make sure, because we've seen in the past that we get compared to departments that don't offer the services that we offer. There's large departments in Georgia that they only have firefighters. They don't have transport for EMS. They don't run advanced life support from their fire trucks. You know, they don't do swift water. They don't do some of those, all those things that we do here in Columbus, Georgia. So I would like for us to have representation on that.
Absolutely, not only be covered by the plan, but to be included in the development of the plan.
Well, thank you for that. As we went through the budget, of course, a lot of those items we requested didn't make the cut. And in the budget letter that I wrote, I know that times are tight, and I would expect, I've seen a few of the presentations that a lot of these items are needed items that everybody needs to get the job done. And I'm curious to see which one of those actually fly through the process. So in looking at this presentation, we were really only looking at several items that we feel like, looking over the past 5 years, that we know that we're going to be in the hole in these line items. And those are auto parts and supplies. That cost has increased 41% over the past 5 years. That line item has not increased over those 5 years. That's $90,000 to meet the anticipated repair costs for our vehicles. Electricity, average increase has been 19% over 5 years. That, again, that line item needs to go up $25,000. Medical supplies, we're making roughly 5% more calls every year. So we're making 25% more calls than we were 5 years ago. But we need more supplies. We don't have the funding in those line items to cover those essential things we need on the ambulance and the fire trucks to provide that pre-hospital emergency care to the patients. We're requesting $25,000 in that line item. Same with pharmacy services. Those prices have increased, not as much as the others, but they've gone up 9% over 5 years, but that line item hasn't gone up. So without these increases, more than likely, I'm coming back sometime after this time next year to request additional funding in the FY20 budget to take care of the shortfall that we anticipate is going to be there. And so just going through the presentation, I guess I need to click the button. Oh, somebody else is doing that. Oh. No, you can do it. You're good. That's fine. It's probably more efficient for you to do it. So again, our alarms have gone up 35,000 to over 40,000. And that's just the call. So you may have multiple vehicles responding to those emergency alarms. So that may end up really looking like 60,000 responses.
Chief, hold
yes.
just a minute. I've got two people in queue. Councilor House.
I was just thinking, Madam Chairman, since these items are probably going to come up, as you said, we ought to go ahead and put them on the add delete list, so we at least discuss them on whether we deal with it now or deal with it later.
So are you looking to put the auto parts, electricity, medical supplies, and pharmacy services on the add list?
Right.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's what I was going to ask and put it on the ad list, but since House has already put it in there, that's good enough. Yes, but
Okay,
he
Chief.
said, he said we are, but he said the cost has increased, and that's where, well, I could have that side talk with Gary. Yeah. He had said that it didn't.
Go ahead, Chief.
Okay. And so looking at our auto parts and supplies line item, the average age of our vehicles, and I'll be honest with you, I really hate using averages for anything because it doesn't really give you a good indication. If you've got two vehicles and one of them's 1 year old and another one's 20 years old, then the average age of your vehicle is 10 years old, and it's just not an accurate reflection of what you have, but that's what we have in our presentation here. So I know we have one ladder truck. When I first came on staff in 98 or 99, I worked on getting that truck. And so it's a 2000 model, and it's actually assigned to Station 4 over on North Oakley Drive. That's ladder 4. Is nearly 20 years old. And that's a frontline truck. They're getting older. The reliability on those vehicles is going down. We have 3 reserve engines and 1 reserve ladder and a reserve squad truck. More often than not, those reserve units will get used more than a frontline unit because they're in service as a frontline unit, and when the frontline unit gets fixed, there's another frontline unit that goes out, and then that unit has to go right back in service. So it's running all the time. We have had instances this year, over the past, 18 months, that I didn't have any reserve units to put in service when the unit went down. So unit goes down, we have to spread out our resources, and for example, look at Station 8 over on Whitesville Road. If we have a single company go down, we will move one of those trucks to that other station. And they will disperse those personnel that were assigned to that unit that broke down throughout the department for the rest of that shift or until that vehicle gets repaired. So I typically don't get those calls till Friday about 4 o'clock. Hey, guess what? So, but what concerns me concerns me greatly. Well, what happens over the weekend is somebody T-bones one of our vehicles, and it goes out of service. Now we're 2 down. And so it just gets worse and worse. And the shop does as good of a job as they can, but they're under some constraints as well. Our trucks are just like any other trucks. They do have specialized purposes. They have a pump. They have ladders with cables and pulleys, and they have to meet a whole lot of safety specifications so that our folks can use them safely. So it may take them a little longer to get fixed. We've had units in the shop for months at a time. Every time I ask about them, they go, parts are on order. And you wonder if they're having to go mine the ore to get it. So, well, thank you, Councilor, for adding those to the list. Our last slide. Some of those items that we had talked about in our requested budget, and I spoke of initially today. Our cancer prevention initiative, we've done some things. We have started out swapping the firefighters when they have a fire. And we have a fire, structure fire, about every 3 days in Columbus. How many of y'all realize that? I mean, it's never on the news for the most part. I mean, unless we get it on Facebook, you never really hear about it for some reason. But about every 3 days, and that's just a structure fire. That's not counting car fires or rubbish fires or woodlands, grass fires. Don't call them woodland fires. We don't want any wood fires around here. But after those fires, those firefighters wear a hood up under their helmet with their mask. And so after the fire, we will swap that hood out for a clean new hood. Because one of the things that we found when we reviewed the research was a lot of the cancers the firefighters are coming up with are thyroid cancer, for example. So that was one thing we crimped and scraped from several different areas and got enough to put out there on the squad trucks, because one of those is going to every fire. So they can swap those out. Our logistics folks can get them cleaned up and get them back to the squad truck. So the next time there's a fire, they'll be able to swap those things out. One of the things that we want to do, and I'll be quite frank with you, when I sat in front of the the accreditation board, the Centers for Public Safety Excellence out in Dallas, I don't want to say last year, but for some reason, it might have been this year. That's one of the things they asked me, what are you going to do to get an extra set of turnout gear? On the spot. My answer to them was we were going to include that in our requested budget, and in the meantime, if we had any extra, we were going to identify the absolute busiest station that we could supply with 2 sets of turnout gear. We hadn't got there yet, but we're getting pretty close to doing that. So we may have one station that has 2 sets, but the others won't. And at some point in time, we hope that all of them do. And in addition to that, we were looking at the decontamination equipment. Well, the price of that turnout gear, we requested $590,000. The decon equipment, which is really it's a dryer, and they call it an extractor. It's a wash machine, but heavy-duty wash machine, and it really cleans all the contaminants out of the equipment. Getting those at every station, so the folks, I could, get back on engine 5 after a fire and go in and get my gear, get it started to wash, and get my new set of gear or my clean set of gear and put it out on the truck, and then go clean myself up, and then be ready to make calls and be better protected. Because all that gear, even after the fire is putting off gases, it's off gas. And those off gases could possibly cause, maybe one of the reasons that our firefighters across the country are seeing more instances of cancer than the normal population. So one of the things we're talking about doing is getting that gear, even after the fire. One of our battalion chiefs did a wonderful presentation a few weeks ago on an initiative called Clean Cab. And so all that gear would not be in the cab with the personnel as they're coming back from the fire. They would secure that in a compartment on the side of the truck. So it's not in the passenger compartment with them. So we're looking at doing that. We looked at some fire trucks that already have that cabinet, if you will, built into their unit. So if we had been approved any of these trucks that we had requested this year, it wouldn't have cost us any more money to do it. We just would have reconfigured the truck to take that gear, to get it out of the cab, out of the compartment where the employees are riding in the truck. Another initiative to go along with the cancer prevention was the vehicle exhaust systems. I know most of you have been by the stations and you've seen the hose that hangs down. It doesn't work. That's what it is. It's a vehicle exhaust system. We got those things, it was 15 or 20 years ago, and it costs way more to get them fixed than it would be to invest in something new that if you've been to Station 2 or Station 9 when we had the grand opening, these units, they look like a air conditioner unit. There's like 6 of them in the bay. And so they clean the air of the diesel exhaust when those trucks crank up. So we were looking at doing that, and that was $515,000 for those stations that don't have those. Vehicles, we looked at 6 emergency vehicles, 15 staff vehicles. We've got a staff vehicle that is, I want to say it's a 1996 model. So eventually we're going to have to address that. We've had vehicles that have broke down in the past. We've made a request to purchase vehicles that we're basically told you got to find it in your budget. Now, if you have cut your budget by doing good management budgeting practices over the years, there is no fat in your budget. There is no $15,000, $18,000 to go out and buy a vehicle. So folks just have to share, which means now only half the workload is getting done. Maybe those 2 you would think could do it faster, but it doesn't turn out that way. And the last area that we had had requested in the budget was the pay adjustment, which was basically about $500,000, just a little bit shy of that, which was the one our committee had come up with that had, I think I brought this to council last year. The committee had come together, they had sent out questionnaires to all the departments in the southeast, asking them, one, what services do you provide? And so when that was all said and done, we picked out those that provided services that we provide, not just because you're in Georgia, because Savannah doesn't operate the same way Columbus, Georgia does. Neither does Augusta. Neither does Atlanta. There are some departments that run like we do, and those were the ones we picked out. We compared apples to apples. So that's all I have in my presentation. I'm open for any questions.
Are there questions of the chief? Ms. Alexander, we have put on the add delete list for the fire department, then the auto supplies, electricity, medical supplies, and pharmacy services. And is that it? That's all, right? Okay. Okay.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Ms. Alexander, I think you're up.
All right, moving right along. I think we're back on schedule. So next up is the Clerk of Superior Court, Ms. Danielle Forte. And turn it over to you.
Right, now what do you do, just verify, that's pretty much it, these two, okay.
And you can see it.
Okay.
Welcome, Ms. Forte. We appreciate your being here, and as I have said to the other department heads and folks who have come to present to us, we are on a schedule, and so we're going to keep you moving along.
Okay.
And but we don't want to overlook anything that you have to give to us. So that you're on.
I'm on, okay, thank you so very much. I'm Danielle Forte, I'm the clerk of both Superior and State Court here in Muskogee County, and I appreciate your time today. I would like to start off my presentation by communicating to council the revenue that the Superior and State Court brings to the city annually. We are a revenue-producing court, and our annual disbursements routinely exceed $3.1 million. That has been since, I know fiscal year 2017, it might be as far back as 2013, but I know it's been since fiscal year 2017. Our current disbursements to the city have equaled $1,992,626.90, so we're right at about $2 million. Which brings me to my next point and the reason why I am before council. I don't know if most of you are aware, but the clerk of Superior and State Court, beginning January of this year, 2019, we were charged with complying with Senate Bill 407, which is an unfunded mandate making mandatory civil filings in both state and Superior Court. So they made electronic filings of civil cases mandatory. Now, the reason why I bring that up is that since that mandate has occurred beginning this year, additional monies have come in that have been dispersed to the city. One of our e-filing vendors is Tyler Technologies, and they charge a fee for e-filing, and part of that fee goes to the city. And so our first quarter of this year, and this would have been... Yeah, the filer, yes. And our first disbursement, this first quarter, which would have been dispersed March of 2019, was $3,470. And so we've used that figure and we've projected that for fiscal year 2020, we're looking at about $13,880. We think it'll be more, but that's the only thing we can go on based on the fact that this has just started. So we're looking at, and I want everyone to remember that number of $13,880. So that brings me as why I'm here. Again, we've been charged with complying with an unfunded mandate of e-filing in both state and superior court. And so I got the memo that the budget is very, very, very tight, so I do want to acknowledge that. And based on the fact that the e-filing has caused our office to be faced with new challenges. The purpose of e-filing was to make it easier for the filer. However, it has caused some challenges to our office with e-filing. Before e-filing became mandatory, the filer would come in, the constituent, the citizen, to file a document. They would have the paper copies, usually about 4 to 5 copies they would have. We would stamp that, and we would give it right back to the customer. Also, they would bring self-addressed stamped envelopes so that we can mail the notices to them. And so now, because it's mandatory e-filing, we're having to incur costs for copies of paper and also for stamps and postage and envelopes and that sort of thing. But because of the memo, we have not requested any money for those things. We're going to work through that. But so we have left it to our one need, which is a personnel request. I am asking for one part-time G10 Step A position dedicated and delegated to e-filing. What has been allotted to our office is a full-time G10 Step A position. And I've had many consultations with our finance director, Angelica Alexander. And so what I have decided to do to meet the demands of the office, that full-time G10 Step A position, I want to split into 2 part-time G10 Step A positions. And so we got the green light, and there's the green light on the slide, from Ms. Alexander to go ahead this fiscal year and make one hire for the part-time G10 position. We had the funding for that. And that particular position is addressing our immediate need that we had when I first took office, which is archiving in the warehouse. So we do have an employee that has been hired for that purpose. But as January 2019 evolved, we realized that we need someone dedicated to processing e-file documents. And so now we are requesting the other part-time G10 position and funding for that position, which brings me to my next slide. And that's the salary request rationale and the reason for that. Prior to e-filing being mandatory, again, people would come in, they would file over the counter. That would be between 8:30 and 5 o'clock. Our deputy clerks interfaced with the customers face-to-face, communicated with them, and if they wanted to get the documents filed on that day, they had to come by 5 o'clock. Now with mandatory e-filing, filing is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And on average, when we come in waiting in our queues, there are as many, both state and superior court, as many as 100 documents awaiting processing. And so I don't know if any of you have ever come to the clerk's office, but routinely when I get to work, there's never been a time that there's not a line of people waiting to come into our office to file, you know, at 8:30, go to court, do whatever, but handle their business. It's usually around about 5 to 7 people. So our deputy clerks have to deal with customers that are coming in. They go to court, they send out notices, they do military discharges, they divorce, adoptions, and so the workload, they have a full workload right there between 8:30 and 5, and so these documents waiting in these queues need attention, and they need attention just like they would if someone had brought them in over the counter. And so that's one of the reasons for requesting an employee dedicated for that function. My next slide, and probably the most important slide, is the steps required to process e-file documents. And I won't go into all the details. If you're bored at night, you can do some reading and read it. But it's approximately 8 steps, and some of the steps have sub-steps. The reason why it is so long, each document that comes in, out of the 100 average, it takes anywhere from 15 minutes to hours to process, depending on the document. And let me tell you why. We don't have a case management system. We're one of the few counties, I think there's only one other county that doesn't have a case management system. Our case management system is set to launch next summer, 2020, late summer next year. In the meantime, we still have got to process these documents. And so one of the things that is required when processing these documents are a lot of repetitive steps. First, we have to put it into mainframe, and we have to put it into different systems until we get our case management system, because these systems do not interface. And so we have to put it into mainframe, which is the system we currently have that's being converted into our case management system. We also have 2 e-filing vendors. We have Tyler and we have Peach Court. So we have to implement the documents into both of those systems. And then we have to put it into our content manager system. That particular system gives the filer access to the documents. So there are a lot of repetitive steps because the systems do not interface. So each document has got to be put into multiple systems and processed. And so that is very time consuming. And so this dedicated employee dedicated to this function can basically just do this so that our deputy clerks, our G12 level deputy clerks, can handle their workload and do what's necessary for that.
Madam Clerk, kind of get to what you're asking for. It looks like are you asking for 23,000?
No. I was getting
How
to
much are you
that.
asking for?
If you want me to jump there, I can say, I'm
Yeah, let's
asking for
just- let's go to that
12,000.
real quick.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's go to that real quick.
Okay, I'm asking for $12,905.
That's it?
Yes.
And you're
And
saying
that-
that, and you're,
That sounds
and you're
positive.
projecting that you're going to bring in 14?
Yes.
So, well, that's a no-brainer. Let's put it on the list.
Can you do classes on how this works?
Well, we've
So
been
other
doing,
folks can do the same kind of thing? I'm just teasing,
Okay.
you know that.
No, you did a very
Okay,
good job of
so,
laying it out.
okay.
Counselor Davis
You must be a lawyer.
would like to
I
put
am.
that on the ad list.
So just to clarify the request,
Is
the
that right?
clerk currently has a full-time G10 position, and when the clerk came into office, that position was unfunded to do some other changes. Through attrition, the funding for that position was able to be funded on a part-time basis at 24 hours a week.
Right.
So the clerk is requesting the additional monies needed to reclassify that position from a full-time position to 2 part-time positions, one at 24 hours a week and one at 20 hours per week, at a cost of $12,905.
Right, so she's using that position and
She's going,
adding one, and
$12,000.
she's bringing in 14, so.
right.
Right,
Yeah.
that, yes. And one of the other things that Angelica had explained to me, that if I limited that position to 20 hours, I would need $9,950. That was going to be Plan B, but without the case management system, I need the 24 hours. I
Right.
need that employee at 20, I need the
So we're going to let you keep your
$12,905.
position and then let you keep the money you bring in.
Okay.
Right,
Okay,
well,
so-
the position would be
The
converted,
14.
reclassified from a full-time position to 2 part-time
Time
positions.
I'm sorry, okay.
Okay, so we're putting on the agenda, on the add delete list, Madam Clerk's request for the reclassification.
Yes.
All right?
So do I proceed or am I?
We have a couple of questions. Let's have
Okay.
Counselor Huff.
Congratulations on your first presentation.
Thank you. I'm sweating bullets up here, but I'm trying to appear cool.
I just pushed my mic. Others may have questions. I was letting you know that Councilor Davis just gave you what you wanted, so it's time to pack up and go home.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. I didn't know whether I was dismissed or not.
Okay.
Okay.
Good job.
Thank you so much.
Councilor Allen.
Have you talked with, it seems like there's some technology that could help you. Have you talked with IT about some type of system that would help you scan the document that you need to inload into Peach Court and Tyler e-file system?
We were working on that. The glitch has been what would work with the case management system, and I'm not sure, and that's the other thing I was going to say, with the case management system, we have a lot of question marks, because the case management system, in some aspects, is going to do a lot of things for us, and other aspects, so we don't quite know what we're required to do and what the case management system will entail. We're thinking that the case management system will do that for us. And so I guess maybe the thought is there's no sense in us doing it now when next summer, late next summer 2020, the case management system is supposed to handle that for us. And also I have to make some decisions, because right now we have the two e-filing vendors. We have Peach Court and we have Tyler. But the case management system is a subsidiary of Tyler. So Peach Court will probably maybe be phased out. We have to make that decision. And of course, if you're using the same umbrella, then the case management system should be able to just go straight into another Tyler product. And so that's what we're learning right now as we go through the process. And there are lots and lots of meetings and training sessions, but we're working through that.
So would it be, until we get to that point, would it be more feasible for the city to help you by providing part-time or temporary workers to help you input that?
Yes, because one of the things we did figure out is even with the case management system, we would still need an employee dedicated to e-filing based on the volume that's coming in. That's an additional duty for our deputy clerks. And so we do need a dedicated employee, even it really is a full-time position, but, again, I would like to say, I got the memo about the budget being really, really tight, and so we have decided to just limit that to a part-time position and work our way through.
So your request is for part-time?
It is for part-time.
Does anybody have any idea if Tyler is going to be ready in 2020?
That's what we've been told. I can't speak for Tyler, because initially it was slated to begin in, was it 2021? 2 years. And so we had a meeting, and we were told that they have shortened the time frame and that they are.
To only a year and a half.
Yeah, to a year and a half. Yeah, so.
Well, I will tell you too, I was just sitting here thinking, Councilor House and Councilor Allen, somebody told us the other day, talking about Tyler and how much further down the road the actual implementation by Tyler will be than what we had originally thought it would be. Because council approved the contract with Tyler
2 years ago.
2018, and for them to tell us then that it's going to be 2020 before they get up and running, because they have to, what we were told was they have to develop software specifically for Muskogee County.
Yes, and I think the other county was also, it may be Forsyth, but it's because of mainframe. Mainframe is pretty old. Was it started in 1970 or something? 1988, and they are having some challenges converting mainframe into a case management system, where I guess other counties had their own updated versions of a case management system that could easily convert. They're having a lot of challenges with mainframe, is what's been told to us.
And what one of our concerns was, as the three of us talked about it the other day, was we don't want to be caught by some authority not doing what we are supposed to be doing. you know, I know what it was. The Recorder's Court says that certain information has to be entered into the state system within a certain period of time. Well, we
GCIC.
missed that a long way.
Right.
And we don't want to, we need to make sure that we're doing what we need to do, not only because people need that information, but because we don't want to get penalized in any way for not doing what we're supposed to be doing. So let us hear from you.
I will, because that's one of the things.
And I see some of your staff saying,
Yes,
so. I'm sorry, go ahead. Anything else for us?
No, if any other questions?
Gary,
Has
Councilor Allen.
the part-time person been added to the list?
We did that, did we not? We added the person,
All right.
the position.
Thank you.
Okay? Anything else?
Madam Chair,
Mr. City Manager.
no, I was just going to just let you know that I'll make sure we bring a court management system update
Great.
at a future meeting so that
Great.
everybody can know kind of where we are with things.
Great. Madam Clerk, our process is that this is now on the ad list, your request, and at our meeting next Tuesday, we will be going through the add delete list to make a decision on whether or not we're going to add or to delete. There's been no vote as yet on this, but will be next week. And we usually do it in the order that, that you guys come to us, but you don't need to necessarily be here unless you just want to come spend some time with council.
Well, I think I'll do that. I think I would like to come back, actually.
But we do
It'll be a
appreciate
learning
what you do,
experience.
and we appreciate the work that you and your staff do. And I know that the judges in Superior Court and in State Court appreciate what you do and how you make them look good.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's our goal. That's our goal, so yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Alexander.
Let's get all my stuff out. Okay, thank you.
All right, so the next department on the list of presentations is our planning department, and our planning director, Rick Jones, is here to present.
Welcome, Mr. Jones.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. I will be brief in my remarks to you. In coming forward to you, I just want you to understand, as I know you've heard from other departments as well, but I want you to understand the importance of what we're trying to achieve here from my perspective as department head for this. We are asking really that you allow us to increase our budget by approximately another $17,000 this year. We initially made the request, there was another $20,000 in there for some software, but my understanding now that's been taken care under IT's budget and not necessarily under mine. The issues that we really are trying to address here, and you notice I did not provide you with a PowerPoint because it's going to be very brief. I think you need to understand that. The things we're looking at, though, really primarily are two key areas here. One is travel, schools, and conferences, where we're almost increasing that by $9,700. We're asking for that consideration because we've got professionals in our office that need to be trained. They need to be going to meetings. They need to be going to these conferences. And I have purposely held back on that because I'm not sure the money's going to be there when we get to some particular issue later on. I've been trying to be very frugal with that money, maybe too frugal in some cases, but I'm trying to make sure that we can get folks to the right conferences in the right areas. There are several conferences we probably should have sent to folks to, but again, we're trying to make sure we watch our budget as much as we possibly can. The other real increase here is about $3,800 in terms of education and training increases. That's also somewhat for staff, but I got to thinking about from a conversation I had earlier during the council meeting this morning that reminded me that we also are responsible for training these boards that we do serve. The Planning Advisory, the Board of Zoning Appeals to some degree, the Board of Historical and Architectural Review, Uptown Facade. These are all members, they're all volunteer members, keep that in mind. They're all citizens that come into us that sometimes don't come in with a whole lot of background in what we're asking them to do as far as the training that goes with that. And we need to be able to provide that kind of training opportunity to them so they'll understand how they're supposed to conduct a meeting, what they're supposed to be saying during a meeting, and what their decisions really are going to mean when it's all said and done. We've got a couple of things like copy of charges and things of that nature on here, but we just want to make sure that we can actually function as a department this next year in dealing with travel and with education components. If you were to go back and look at the history of my budget, the planning department's budget for the last 3 to 5 years, you're going to see it's pretty much consistent. That's why I didn't provide you with a bar chart, because it wouldn't really show you anything other than the fact that we've been consistent. The request we've made here today is pretty much the same request we've made for the last several years as well. And it's just now time, from my perspective anyway, to come to you directly and say, we need some assistance with this in terms of trying to make sure that as a planning department, we're doing the things we're supposed to do, the things that you expect us to do on a day-to-day basis. So with that, Madam Chair, I would ask for your consideration on that to help us increase our budget so we can, again, perform the duties you expect us to do. My number is 17.6.
Councilor House.
How much money? So 17.6.
Put it on that.
Yeah, put it on.
We're asking that go on the ad list, please, Ms. Alexander.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
$17,600, and I'm sorry, I was confirming another
You're okay.
presentation.
He's
What was it
done.
for?
Travel and education and training.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to change the order just a little bit. We're still waiting on the marshal to arrive. And if you don't mind, Ms. Clerk of Council, if you could present while we wait, or in his place.
Let's do that, if you would, Ms. Davis.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. I came before you on April 30th, and at that time, I presented my justification for my budget request. Therefore, I will be brief today. On May 6th, the council committee and staff met in the Clerk of Council's office. The committee members and staff that were present: Mayor Pro Tem Evelyn Turner Pugh, Councilor Bruce Huff, Assistant City Attorney Lucy Sheftal, and Human Resources Director Aretha Hollowell. Councilor Allen had a scheduling conflict, therefore he was not present.
That means I screwed
My FY 2020 budget request that was a consensus by staff and the two-member committee that were present are as follows. To reclassify one administrative secretary, grade 10A, to deputy clerk pro tem, grade 12C. Increase for reclassification of $3,981.12. Step increases of one administrative secretary, grade 10A to grade 10C. Increase in annual salary of $1,467.16. And a regular part-time administrative clerk, grade 9A, for an annual salary of $16,328. This is a total of my calculation of $21,776.28. The budget request for the clerk's office did incur salary savings that were captured when I was hired at a substantially lower salary than that of my predecessor.
What was the total on that, Ms. Davis, the total request?
My calculation, Madam Budget Chair, is $21,776.28.
Ms. Alexander, what,
So the amount would actually be $22,284. And that would be to fund a new part-time administrative clerk, one position that's 25 hours a week. That the amount of that is $17,577. To reclassify the administrative secretary position, G10 position, to a deputy clerk pro tem, G12C. The amount is $3,003. And to reclassify the full-time administrative secretary, G10A to G10C, that amount is $1,704. So the total amount of all three items is $22,284.
now, Ms. Alexander, I was trying to follow what you were telling us here. Are those positions that you just read off the ones that are on this chart?
Well, those were based on the conversation that I had with the clerk and the HR director. And so, yes, to reclassify the one administrative secretary, G10A, which is a part-time position, to a deputy clerk pro tem, G12C, that amount is $3,003. I don't know how we came up with the other amount.
I don't need the recap of the
Okay.
amount, just the recap of the position.
Yes, so that's a
Okay.
part-time position. Then the step increase for the one administrative secretary is a full-time position, going from a 10A to a 10C.
See, okay.
And then the addition of one part-time administrative clerk, at G9, the amount is $17,577.
And I believe that Councilor Barnes has asked that those be put on the ad list.
Just
Yes.
want to make sure for the part-time deputy clerk pro tem, was that for 29 hours or?
Yes, that's at
Okay.
29 hours.
Thank you.
Councilor Crabb.
Thank you. Angelica, could you tell us what the salary savings were that she referred to?
Well, the difference between the the former clerk's salary and the new clerk's salary with benefits was $18,168.
So really, so that offsets this 22,000, correct, or not?
It does
It
not.
partially offsets.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, partially offsets.
It does not.
Not at all.
No. These
So
items, this 22,000 would be in addition to the budget. Because the
Okay,
whole-
so the old salary is not part of this
Because the
budget.
old salary was not budgeted, the new salary was budgeted.
That's correct.
Okay, I get it. Thank you.
Okay, and Ms. Davis, you've heard me say ad nauseum that we'll be voting on this next week.
Yes,
Thank you. Ms. Alexander.
All right, so the next office to present before council is the marshal's office. So we have our marshal, Mr. Greg Countryman, here.
Welcome, Marshal Countryman.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Welcome.
I'm walking. You can tell your age when you have to rush to go somewhere. But,
Well, that's never happened to any of us.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon. we're not here to ask for funding increase, but what we are here for today is to ask for authorization to adjust our budget. We want to move the $5,000 that's in sworn overtime into our operating budget. The uniform contract that we had, they no longer make the gray trouser. They're not making gray trouser anywhere. So we're going to have to get new uniform trousers. So we want to move the money that's currently budgeted for our sworn overtime into our operating budget, correction into our clothing allowance budget, so that we can purchase the new trousers for that. And we're also asking to move money from our bailiff budget line item, $12,000 of that, into our operating budget line item. So those are the only two things that we're asking for.
Councilor Huff has said, let's put it on the ad list. We don't want our deputies going pantless.
Right, right. It's going to be budget neutral, yeah, so.
Okay, well, it will go on the ad list.
Yes, ma'am.
And as you're aware, Marshall, we'll vote on this next week.
Okay.
As we go through the entire ad delete list. One other item that I would want to tell you while you're here, we have heard today from the sheriff, from the chief of police, and from the fire chief, and now with you. And one of the things that all of them have brought to us, and we have requested that this get started, is that we look at doing a comprehensive analysis of our public safety departments and their salaries and benefits and so forth.
Yes,
and the marshal's office certainly would be included in that. We don't at this point know anything about what we want to do there, except that we want to do an analysis.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
I'm sure that at some point, hopefully in the very near future, you'll be hearing from the appropriate person to participate in the in this analysis and in this study. We know that we've got to address those issues, and
Yes,
I'm assuming that you will be willing to help with that study.
Always.
Good,
Okay.
good. Anything else for the marshal? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Alexander.
Well, we actually do have one more department, and they're on their way. I know. It's the juvenile court. It was a late confirmation.
Well, let's go off mic, and we'll take just a
10-minute recess?
take a 10-minute recess, and maybe they'll be here when we come back.
Okay, thank you.
We are back in session. And before we move to the next presentation, Councilor Barnes would like to be recognized.
Yes, Madam Chair. The chief of police, when he was here, it was discussed about the motor squad headsets. He had mentioned it, but we failed to, and I would like to add that on the ad list at a cost of $30,235. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay,
Appreciate that.
thank you. Ms. Alexander.
Yes, Madam Chair, the last department office presenting today is our juvenile court, and we have our juvenile court Judge Kennan here presenting. Judge Kennan.
Welcome, Judge.
Hello. Actually, I'm going to ask Ms. Cannon, if I may, our court director, to do the heavy lifting on this. But hello, everyone. Good to see you. Thank you for having us here today. I'm going to read this, and then she can correct me if I'm wrong. This has been approved by CSU, which was the first question I was asked by someone earlier. This is basically changing from a G13 to a G16, which is an increase of 3 grades, because she is currently, this is, by the way, Ms. Gail Dykes, she's currently a G13J. We would go over 3 steps from her current J step, bring us to step M at 45.2.32 annually. Is this still correct?
It is.
Okay. Since this amount is larger than step A on the G16 line, 38,976.10, we then find this amount on the G16 line, which is G16G. So her new annual salary would be 45.2.32, which comes to 32,27.32 plus FICA for a total of an increase of $3,749. And it'll be revenue neutral, because we have figured out a way to save the salary by someone that's leaving and just delay hiring somebody and handle it that way. This is Mrs. Dykes is the deputy director of the juvenile court. She has a lot more responsibility than she did when she first started. We have a lot more programs, thanks to a certain judge, that we've started, and we have a lot more oversight. So we need her in that deputy director position, and she's never gotten a raise since she's been there. So.
All right, Councilor Huff has requested that it be, the position be added. Ms. Alexander?
Thank you.
Okay, yes, so that is a reclassification of a custody investigator, grade 13J, to a juvenile court assistant director, grade 16G, at a cost of $3,749.
All right, then we've added that to the list. Anything else, Judge?
No, ma'am.
That takes care of it.
As you are aware of our process, we won't vote on that today, but next Tuesday is when we will address the add delete list, and at that time we'll take a vote on this as well as all of the other adds and deletes that have been presented to us. Okay?
Do you want me to clarify where we make it revenue neutral?
I think I did.
You good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
All right. Bless you.
Ms. Alexander, anything else?
Well, ma'am, just announcing that our next meeting is Tuesday, May 21st, and it begins at 9 a.m. We do have one department presenting, that's our tax commissioner, and as soon as she wraps up her presentation, we'll get right to the add delete list.
I'm wondering if between now and then, Ms. Alexander, if there's information that the council would like to have you send to us, I would at least like a revised add delete list so that I can take a look at it before that Tuesday morning and try to make some decisions in my own mind of how what I want to do with some of those positions. So anything else that the council would request of the finance department? In case nobody's told you today, you're doing a terrific job in handling this and keeping up with us and all of the things you have to keep up with. And we do appreciate all that you and the people from your department are doing to keep us on track.
Well, thank you.
With that, if there's no further business, we are adjourned.